I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Council of the Whole on Monday, December 13th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m. in the McKinnon Council Chambers. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Chair, would you call the roll call?
Councilor Adams is present. Councilor Petrona?
Present.
Councilor Daniel?
Present.
Councilor Dow?
Present.
Councilor Jovan? Present. Councilor Lazo?
Excused.
Councilor Marchetti?
Present.
Councilor Ryan?
Present.
Councilor Steves?
Present.
Okay, at this time, I'm not quite sure if I need a motion or not. I'd like to ask the town manager to make a quick statement about the website, which was open today. And then I'd like to do that now, if I could.
You can just make an announcement.
Just make an announcement? Sure. Very good. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and members of the council. As you may recall, earlier this year, we came to the council for utilization of some of our CARES money. One of the things we were looking at is upgrading our website, so that would allow us to link into social media for better communication in times such as this when we have to push information out to the public. You were kind enough to allow us to move forward with that. However, due to the CARES Act requirements, we had to make sure that the deliverables were received and that we paid for all invoices prior to December 31st of this year. Because of that, we were on an accelerated pace with Civic Plus, and we were supposed to go live this week. We had targeted today. There was a problem this morning with the DNS. That is when you go up to the top of your browser and you type in Southbridge, Mass, or CI Southbridge. It wasn't showing the new website. That got resolved late this afternoon around the close of business day. Unfortunately, when it popped up and cut over the new website, a couple things were missing. Councilor Marchetti immediately notified me that he didn't see the calendar. I was able to get that rectified. I'm trying right now to get system permissions, which I should have already had, to put a link to the old website, which will be up during the transition period as we pull in some of the remaining information from the old website. The town clerk and I spoke a few minutes ago with the chairman about the validity of the postings outside in town hall, which would stand for the public notification of the meetings such as this evening's. But tomorrow morning we will work diligently to ensure that other meeting information is posted to the new calendar. And I already have calls and emails into Civic Plus to make sure other pertinent information goes up. Long term, this website should be good for the town. It's got a new look, new feel, new capabilities, new functionality, and I look forward to the team working forward, going forward. As you know, Mr. Canoyer, our IT manager, is leaving at the end of the month, which the timing couldn't have been avoided, but it is what it is. We're trying to make things work within the law, the CARES Act, and we will do what is ever necessary to get this running into a satisfactory state in the next couple of days. But as we go forward, you will notice there's a lot of functionality and things that we will be able to utilize for the benefit of the council, all the elected and appointed boards, as well as the citizenry. Right now I'm using some stock photos, but ultimately I would like to be able to get professional photos of the town, as well as other towns that use this type of format, do citizen photographs, seasonal photographs. As I indicated, we are going to resurrect some of our social media sites so that as information is posted to the website, it will push out automatically so that people will get notifications. There will be alert notifications for issues such as mask mandates or vaccination if we were able to get the Vax Bus here. So there's a lot more that we can do with this particular website, the format. It's still the same software vendor, Civic Plus. It's just their newer version of the platform for a municipality this size. So I apologize for the not ready for prime time event that happened this afternoon. That was beyond my control, but we are working to rectify that. And I'm happy to entertain any questions, but I'm hoping by noontime tomorrow, working with the clerk's office, we'll get any other meetings for this week up on that calendar, and then we will continue to move forward and get it all moved over.
Very good. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 4, review and discuss the results and recommendations of the Charter Review Committee. I'd like to welcome Yvonne Torres, Denise Clements, and Pam LeDuc, members of the committee, and compliment them on their fine work. Looking over the binder that we were given over this past weekend, it's marvelous. It's really a great job. It's easy to follow, in my opinion, and it lays things out in an orderly fashion. A nice document, very nice document, so thank you very much for that. Is there anything in particular that you feel you'd like to say before we start the discussion?
Of course. First, thank you for having us this evening and for coming up with this Council of the Whole to review this important information. I would like to say, as far as the new website goes, I'm really glad it wasn't effective this morning, because this morning I was able to pull up the agenda item from 2015 on the last charter changes, and this afternoon when I went back in, it wasn't there. So hopefully old minutes and agendas and stuff are going to be on the new site. As you said, we gave you the binder. It was verbatim from our original, the charter that we currently have, and as we commented, but for those who might not have heard during that meeting, originally any changes that we're recommending have either been struck out and replaced with red, or red may have just been added and something not struck out in a sentence or a paragraph, or something might just be struck out and no replacement, depending on the recommendation. On each item that's been recommended, there was a blue line underneath with a date, recommended meeting change or change meeting, and there would be the date in which we originally would have taken a vote amongst ourselves to recommend an item, and if we amended that down the road because we reviewed it over and over, and sometimes we tweaked something, then there would be a second date. All of those items are listed in the minutes that were also provided in the binder. So I just wanted to reiterate some of that information. I'm not sure if you had amongst yourselves a way of how you want to. I felt, personally, I think we felt during our meetings that we were going to literally just go page to page. And if there's, we can comment on changes, or you can discuss and debate amongst yourselves of things and move forward from there. But that might be the most logical way to do it.
Yep.
So.
Everyone all set? Okay, going page to page. Chapter 1, page 1. Any questions?
No changes.
No
Yeah,
changes?
no changes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick thing. I think under the section 2 there, it looks like there's some text missing in there. When it was transferred to this page, it looks like some text is missing because it words weirdly. Laws of the Commonwealth, where laws of the Commonwealth distinguish between towns and cities, there should be a comma in there, and that should be at the end of the sentence. Should be the beginning of the sentence as where. I don't have my original copy of the charter in front of me, so I don't know exactly what it stated, but it just sounds weird the way it's a long run-on sentence in there and it should be broken up.
Councillor Steves, if you could just point out, don't read it, just point out where that is so we can look at it.
It's 121, section 121.
Sorry, just echo a little. 121.
Yeah. Where it's the second sentence of that particular paragraph. It's just a run-on.
Oh, is it possible?
It really should be broken up as the town of Southbridge shall be governed by those general laws applicable to towns, period.
Where the laws of the Commonwealth distinguish between the towns and cities, all the provisions of law applicable to the town of Southbridge, except as otherwise specifically provided.
There just needs to be a comment there. It's just phrased weird run-on the way it's set up.
That's exactly how it is in here, but we're trying to fix anything that makes sense. So if you're saying somewhere needs a comma, we put a comma. You just point it out and we'll put it in.
And start the sentence with where for that one.
Okay, so we're looking for a comma.
That makes more sense.
So it's just looking for a comma on that run-on paragraph. Okay. All right. So nothing was actually missing, though?
No, it doesn't seem to be. It's just weird looking.
It could happen. We're human.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we just walk it through. That'll probably be easier for you guys, right? So if you go to Chapter 2, the first recommendation is down on 223. We felt that terms should be defined in some way, shape, or form.
That makes sense.
I don't know, Chairman Daniels, if you want, we could kind of go through like that, and if anybody has something specific, they could just yelp out,
Yep.
just tell the chairman, I don't know, we'll just keep going. That way it won't take so long.
That's fine. It's an informal
okay.
discussion.
All right, you're good?
Yep.
232, just a simple shall and a may. Not simple, because sometimes shall, as we know, shall is shall, may is not necessarily shall, right? And we discuss that a lot. So
I had
again,
something on this one. This is going to be an informal meeting, right? We can just
Yeah.
talk. You can talk too, actually.
is that okay? If you don't want me to say, if you
No,
want me
that's
to,
fine.
That's fine.
Informally,
We're good.
I had, on this one, I wrote down that changing it from shall to may is discretionary, optional. So who would decide that? Would the town council decide it? Would the town manager decide that? Rather than shall, town councilors shall be reimbursed for actual expenses. You changed it to may.
do you want to talk on that, Pam? Because you talked a lot.
Well, I think the issue here was, it's of course subject to an annual appropriation for such purpose. If there is a given year when that annual appropriation doesn't exist, then a counselor may not be eligible for reimbursement of expenses. And the other issue here too is that the town accountant, that's her responsibility to review any expenses that are submitted and determine whether they are legitimate or not and eligible for payment. So that's the reason changing from shall to may.
Okay.
I gather rogue expenses by a counselor could happen, or may have happened in the past even, you never know. So, should be cleared.
Okay.
Again, just recommendations down the road. If you want to say shall, it'll say shall. 243. Now, 243 had to do with minute keeping, which had been an issue at one point. So, the town council shall provide for keeping accurate minutes of its proceedings, which shall be a public record. Annually at the reorganizational meeting, the town council shall appoint a recording secretary and a clerk of the town council. For the purpose of the section only, the recording secretary shall be under the jurisdiction of the town council.
So I have another question on this one, unless somebody else has something.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Okay, I don't have any problem with changing it to accurate minutes. Appointing recording clerk, secretary, and a clerk. A clerk is responsible for general operations, and isn't the town manager's executive secretary responsible for being our clerk? So do we need a clerk? A recording secretary, I agree. We need a recording secretary to do all of our meetings, but a clerk, I'm not sure we need one, because I think the town manager's executive secretary would serve as our clerk.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yvonne, is that part of,
It's not part of the job description of the executive secretary or the town manager to be the clerk for the town council.
Okay.
And in this instance here, the reason we put it this way is the recording clerk for the council here is an employee of the town of Southbridge.
Right.
So she can be used for like other subcommittees and for other duties, but in this section only, it shows that she's the recording clerk for the town
Town
council.
council. All right.
You'll notice what we struck out is customarily the town manager.
Right.
That was another reason. The town manager is not the clerk of the council, so that's conflict, basically.
And we went through this a couple of times, as you can see from all the changes in the meeting minute dates, so.
That was the, yeah. It also put directly, for the purpose of this, that the secretary is under the jurisdiction of the council. Therefore, there should never be a conflict if the council is asking the secretary to write something, print something, amend something according to vote. They are directed by the council, not by the town manager, to do that type of work.
Right.
That don't have to hash that one again.
Counselor?
Yeah, one quick observation. I was just curious, first of all, I don't think the council has ever had a clerk of the council per se. I know some boards elect a member of their body to be a clerk, but quite frankly, Since I've been on it, we've never had one, and quite frankly, I'm not quite sure what a clerk of the town council would do.
I didn't catch your last, you,
I'm sorry, because I can't hear you.
yeah, we
I
can't
said, I'm not
understand
quite
you.
sure. I said that I've seen other town boards, specifically selectmen, would elect a member of their board to be a clerk. But quite frankly, we've never seen it since I've been up here. And I'm not quite sure what a clerk of the town council would actually do that the recording secretary isn't already doing. So I don't know if having a clerk is even necessary.
Is it our
Any-
anticipation?
any-
that it's
any
one
thought
and
on
the
that?
same?
Unless it was in the absence of the recording clerk, recording
probably
secretary, then there would be a de facto clerk of the town council, which shall be responsible for taking minutes at that specific meeting. I know that in the case of Board of Selectmen, that's what happens. Then that's why they usually choose a clerk, designate someone as a clerk to take minutes in the absence of their admin or their secretary.
I know in most towns that I've covered, it usually ends up being the town administrator or town manager. So,
Councilor Jovian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. You have stricken out customarily the town manager, and I have a copy of the charter. Where was that in the former charter? It's not in the charter.
It's in the charter we took off the website. No, that was
I have
listed.
the charter that was issued to us. It's not in that charter.
243.
It just says the council shall provide for keeping a journal of the proceedings which shall be a public record.
This is true.
Maybe it was one of the changes that we did in one of the meetings, and we took it back out. It could be something like that.
Okay.
You know, that we added it in there, and then we decided, no, it doesn't belong in there, and we took it out.
Okay.
That could be
I
why.
just want to, for consistency,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure
That's
that
why.
I don't see in the original charter. Secondly, I have no problem with the fact that we appoint a recording secretary, but we don't have a job description for the clerk of the town council. Is the purpose of the clerk for the, request of records and keeping of the records? Or
So just to be clear, the clerk would be one of your, of you, one of your body. When you appoint your chair, your vice chair, at that meeting, you would also appoint a clerk.
right.
And it would be a member of the town council.
And the purpose of that clerk is to do what?
Again, in the absence of the recording secretary, they would be responsible for taking minutes.
Making sure the paperwork is in order
Yeah,
for that meeting.
things like that. It may never happen, but it could. And you don't have to do this. I mean, you could appoint a clerk of the town council if say, your recording secretary is absent and there is no one else to take minutes for your meeting. At that meeting, prior to your meeting, you could appoint a clerk for the meeting, and one of you could take the minutes. And you would be a clerk pro tem, and you would submit the minutes that way.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I think that's just something I'm going to have to think through.
I guess it's because when you hear clerk, you're thinking of a member of, a staff member who is your clerk. No, that's not what's meant here. It's someone, one of you, who is the clerk.
Can I make an observation? There's no town clerk today, secretary here, recording secretary, no, this isn't here. So did someone appoint someone to take the minutes tonight?
Dave's doing it.
So,
I was going to say,
there's our recording
Cameras
clerk.
are for.
However, it is being recorded. so-
Right.
right.
Oh, Councilor Adams.
Yeah, I'm over here today, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick to the committee. Did you mention in here that it was already in the organization of our rules, our town council rules?
Oh, maybe
So,
that's what it is.
under our rules and regulations, rule number 3 under organization, town council shall appoint a clerk of the town
Yeah,
council
that's
with
what,
duties.
that's where it came
That's
from.
where it came from.
Yeah, because, so it's already in here.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's
Under
been
our
a while.
rules. Yeah, okay. I didn't know if you mentioned that or not, so I knew it was in here somewhere.
That's why
That
it's here.
we're required to appoint a clerk once the reorganization goes.
When we were doing our review, we had everything spread out. We had our current charter, we had council rules and regs, we had the town bylaws, we had former charters. So we referred back to those documents often.
I just wanted to make note that it's actually in our rules and organization, so, I mean, it's there in writing that we're required to do it at the reorganization period.
But it's not in the charter,
God, that was
That's
such
not in the charter.
the clerk.
Okay,
So again,
I
it's
don't wanna
something
get
that it's
hung
up
up
to
on
you
that.
guys. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
okay. Let's
This is
move on.
just informal, so
Yep.
we can talk over each other, doesn't matter.
Jeez. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. Let's see. 244, let's see, establish the committee by the council. All we did there was, we find it very important, as you'll notice going throughout, and there's a couple of specific areas, where it's good to refer back to, charter is your constitution, and it's important to refer back at times to the authorization within that charter that lets you do something else within that charter. And we felt it was important in this case, where it talks about that the council members may establish committees, subcommittees, advisory committees, as you can read it all there, and then in the end, subject to confirmation of the council, and then as provided for in 242. So basically, it just goes back up, because 242 is very clear. The town council may enact bylaws and other measures and rules and regulations not inconsistent with the charter governing its own proceedings and other matters pertaining to the exercise of its powers and the performance of its duties. For me personally, that's one of the most important, if not the most important statement in this charter in a lot of ways for you, the governing body, and I've pointed it out many times. But so you're going to see sometimes we are going to refer back to 242 because there's where it tells you, as long as they're not inconsistent, somewhere down the road you might have found something inconsistent, yes. But in most cases, as long as what's not inconsistent, you have the power to make something in addition to what's here. You can change, you can make a measure, you can make a policy, a procedure, whatever. So that's just very important. And so we've added that on a couple of things, just so somebody else reading it might go, well, how come they can do this? Oh, 242
there,
says it.
242.
Chapter 8, how come they can do this? 242 says it. That's why they can do it, Just, all right. Okay, 245, town councilors shall, this was a tricky one. This whole paragraph. It originally, town councilors shall, okay, just trying to think, shall not, where's the first part? Town councilor employees under the, this is, I was missing one word in here. Town councilors shall not
That width shouldn't be
give
there.
orders or directions, I think, to the town officers and employees under the jurisdiction of the town manager solely through the manager, and neither the council nor its members shall give orders to any such officer or employee, either publicly or privately. That's what it was. It was kind of a double standard, like you're not supposed to give orders, but you should be able to have a conversation with an employee. It made it sound like you couldn't do either, So we tried to clean it up and make it as easy to understand. Town councilors shall not impede with the daily operations, nor give orders or directions to town officers and employees, either publicly or privately. This prohibition shall not preclude the town council or its members from asking questions, seeking information, or conducting conversations with said employees. So it just kind of tightened the whole thing up and didn't have a double negative and whatever going on in there. So again, just a suggestion as to how it seems to make more sense. Because they're solely through, but yet we're supposed to be able to talk, you're supposed to be able to talk to people, but then it's solely through. So that would mean you'd be calling the manager every day if every conversation you were going to have with an employee. Yeah. You just are not supposed to give them direction, and you're not supposed to impede the daily operations. That's the big thing, because that's what a town manager is supposed to do, is the daily operations. So.
Okay, well, what I wrote down was that I don't like the word impede, but what you just said now kind of like makes sense. I mean, I try to always go through the town manager. He has reminded me often that I need to go through him. But asking questions of town employees, wouldn't that contradict the words not impede? Because when you ask through the town manager and he's got to go talk to a town employee, would that be impeding their daily operations? Part of their daily operations is to answer taxpayers' questions. So that would be my question. Or either we're allowed to ask questions or not. If we ask a question, are we impeding with their daily operations?
No.
No.
The way it originally reads You're not supposed to ask a question unless you've gone through the town manager.
Right.
But then it says in the same paragraph, but you can ask questions.
You can ask
questions.
right.
So that made no sense. Now, we're just pointing out that the impetus is not to impede, not to stop the daily operations, not to conflict with what orders they've been given for their daily operations. That's not your job. If you have a problem with something going on, it's the council's purview to then talk to a town manager or, and make sure, but it's not your job to do the daily operations to really make, to stop something or impede it. So, but on the other hand, we wanted to make sure it's still really permissible for anybody to ask questions. Any citizen can ask a question of anybody, and certainly a counselor should be able to ask a question of somebody without, again, knocking on the town manager's door for 2 minutes. Obviously, if a department person said, look, we got a counselor who's, again, rogue and constantly bothering us, then I would imagine a town manager would make comment to somebody, to the chair, to you independently, you're all independent elected people, and would say, look, you're taking a lot of time contacting them all the time with questions. At least that's what I would assume. But the impetus for writing it was because the paragraph read really strange.
I think we chose impede because of the negative connotation. I mean, you're actually hindering someone. If you walk into the assessor's office and ask Mr. Knoyer a question, that's not hindering him or not allowing him to do his job. If you park yourself in his office for half the day, that might be hindering him from doing his daily operation, conducting his daily operation. So.
All right.
Or even debate how he's doing his job. You might have a different opinion how an accountant or how a tax person should be collecting his taxes, but that's not your job. Your job then is to bring that to the town manager, not to the department head. His job is to oversee his department people.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, going down, 251, provided that written notice of such meeting. That's the only thing we changed in 255. Under meetings important, we added the word written. And let's see, 252. Speak loud so we can all hear you.
I'm just saying, the rules of the town council provided is what we struck out and just put a period and started with a
Inhabitants
sentence.
and employees,
And
yeah.
then added counts as set forth in town council rules and regs.
Right. Again, the charter shouldn't, it's referencing town council rules and regs directly, or the rules of the town council, but we know that that exists outside of this charter. The charter is the Constitution, and rules and regs are the things that are more fluid. So the charter shouldn't say, the rules of the council provide for. They're laid out in there, but if the rules don't, if another piece of paper that you voted on doesn't exist, so be it. The charter doesn't say it has to exist. Nowhere in the charter does it say you must have a rules and regulations book. Do you understand? The rules and regulations came up because councilors wanted more. They wanted all those things that say you can make rules and regulations. Well, where do we keep that information? How do we pay attention to that? That's the rules and regs. But here it was, the rules of the town council shall provide. Well, this charter didn't say there's rules of the town council. So it kind of was, a little off. So it just made more sense that the inhabitants and the employees of the town, The inhabitants and the employees of the town shall have a reasonable opportunity to be heard at such meetings as set forth in the town council rules and regs versus the rules of the council, because there is a document now called the council rules and regs. So it just...
And
Yeah.
Councilor Marquetti, to your previous point about who determines, so reasonableness to me might be something very different than you. But you're going to define the reasonableness of this as set forth in your council rules and regs. That will define for both of us what that may be. I know this, when I served on council, this was always bone of contention. When people got up at Citizens Forum or they wanted to speak on an agenda item, they do have the opportunity to speak, but council also has, should set certain rules and regulations as to what that is. Time limit, how it's done, how many times they can get up, and those types of things. So this defines that reasonableness.
And you'll find it in council rules and regs, which could be altered from time to time based on a council, as opposed to your charter, which shouldn't be changed all the time. It's, once it's established.
Did you strike out thereat because it's in the rules and regulations already, that language? Is that why you struck that out? in regard to any matter considered thereat. Did you strike that out of the charter because it's defined in the rules and regulations? Because it is in the rules and regulations.
Yeah, because, right, in the rules, it's now defined as things that are not on the agenda, or if it's on,
Right,
yeah.
and that's why you
Right,
struck
yes.
that out. Okay.
Again, we're going back to like almost a year ago, so we review it, but we have to
Yeah.
think.
So this is one that I looked at, and I was concerned that we might be eroding citizens' right to speak at council meetings. And there was one thing that I always thought about this citizens forum, whereas the charter says they can be heard at any such meeting in regard to any matter considered thereat. Well, that means they can talk about agenda items at citizens forum. Now, I know that in our council's rules, they can't talk about citizens forum, agenda items at citizens forum, but the council rule, or the charter, says they can talk about anything. So I've always thought, we always tell them, you can speak at citizens forum on any matter that's not on an agenda, but that's wrong. They can talk about anything, even if it is on the agenda. So, and you pointed out earlier that 224, that
242.
224, that it can't be inconsistent with the charter. So that's why I'm looking at this and saying, do we want to leave this one alone, or do we want to change it? That was my only concern about this one, that we might, now we're eroding citizens' right to speak. That's all.
But, Mr. Chairman, I would argue that in the rules and regulations, it sets forth the exact way to do this, which gives all the requirements that you have the right to talk to any agenda item thereat, and you will also, additionally, there shall be a citizens forum which will allow citizens the opportunity to present information that are not regular items. So it's defined in the rules and regulations. So it's, all this item is saying is that you will have the opportunity to be heard as outlined in the rules and regulations. So I think it does give that specific language to say, this is how you have the right to be heard, and then pursuant to the rules and regulations, and then the rules and regulations articulate exactly how that's going to be formulated. So I think it's strengthening the ability for citizens to talk, because there's no gray area anymore. Council can't say, hey, it says it here, but it's inconsistent. So I think you're bringing consistency to it by referencing where in the rules and regulations that you would find.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, except that that's council's rules. Council rules, I don't think, should overwrite the charter. So I know it's in the council rules, but what I'm saying is that's incorrect, that council rules are overriding the town charter now. And by changing this, I don't see that it's made it any clearer. It says that they can, reasonable opportunity to be heard at any such meeting, and then the rest is skipped out. So now you're not saying anything. They can say whatever they want, except that it's in the council's rules. So,
But there's nothing here, Councilor Marquetti, with all due respect, that says at citizens forum.
in council's
I
rules.
don't read there where it just says they have a reasonable opportunity to be heard at any such meeting, but then it's up to the council to determine when that is.
All right.
When and how.
Correct.
I don't
It
know,
doesn't say in there at citizens forum.
I know, so
I don't know if you recall that the reason.
that's what I'm saying. It's not clear. To me, it's not any clearer, but that's just my opinion. So,
Well, there's twofold to things. There was a time when people would speak during citizen forum on anything and everything, and then at the agenda item, again, they would speak at anything and everything, or they would speak at citizen, then they tried to squash that by saying, if you already spoke, you can't speak again, and they didn't encourage people to speak at an agenda item. Well, what could happen by that point is citizens forum was at the beginning, and 2 hours later, when you get to an agenda item, whatever that person said 2 hours ago, maybe people listening weren't tuned in anymore. Maybe counselors had forgotten what the argument was. And so at some point, council decided that citizens forum is for things not on the agenda. If you have a bone of contention with something on it, come up during that agenda item and hear your piece. You also don't have to wait, you could just come into a meeting whenever you saw that agenda item coming up, an hour into it or whatever, and come on and speak. So I remember that way back, and that's when some of those rules came into play so that it was more organized. I was also really, I learned a lot at MMAs and just talking with Boston. It was It's interesting, they were shocked to find out that our citizens could speak as often and as much as they kind of wanted to, because most bodies will have, your questions have to be on a piece of paper and turned in at the beginning of a meeting, and then the chair would tell you, who could speak when, and if they even got to your question, I know that's not us, I'm just saying, it was really interesting to learn about how their towns and communities handled citizens who might take hours to get, their information out. So I thought when council kind of went into some more rules to that, it didn't say that they couldn't, and yes, it was a bone of contention, because people say, you can be heard no matter what they're at. It doesn't say when, right. But according to the Charter 242, says council can make rules and regulations not inconsistent. It wasn't inconsistent, they could talk, they just put a little tweak to when they could talk, so they still let them talk. So anyway, we were just trying to, again, make it balance with council rules and regs. So, but
Okay.
just suggestion. 253, 6 members. We put in a number because 6 members of the town council shall constitute a quorum for the conduct of business. Actually, it's fine. Do that.
Why 6? Why not?
Isn't
5?
it
that was my question,
I
like,
don't
why
know what
not a
6
bare
is.
majority?
I'm
Why
just reading
Why are
that.
we
Oh
changing
my
it to
goodness,
6?
that's wrong.
That is that is 5.
I was concerned about that.
Somebody brought that up to me and I didn't look at the section.
That's
5.
because-
That should be 5.
5
6 is
members, but we
2/3.
wanted to write it out, not leave it blank, and we didn't just say quorum, we wanted to make sure people understood what a quorum meant. A quorum is 5 of 9. 5 members of the town council constitute a quorum for the conduct of business.
I think the issue was defining a majority.
Right.
And I was going to say, I'm glad it's 5 and not 6, because I was worried. We've had years when we've had multiple counselors off. What if 2 people don't show up? And now we have 5, we're not up, 5 of 7. That's some, that's
Right.
quorum. That was quorum under our current rules. So when I saw 6, I was like,
No.
that's a little concerning, considering we've had so many counselors step off midterm
Right.
and not in empty seats.
So it's
Plus,
just
that's
very
about-
clear to understand that 5 is the quorum,
5.
but when you have a vote, that means all 5 have to agree because it needs to be a majority. You need to be, how many?
It depends on the item at hand. It could be a majority of all those present, and then it could be a majority of
It's supposed to be a
The
majority.
whole council.
the whole council, depending
Right,
on the
there's whole
item
count-
being
right.
voted on.
Right, there's that depending on the, So, okay, sorry about that.
So
It
you'll be
is 5.
You'll be making that change, or?
It is 5, yes.
It is 5. It is 5. All we were trying to do is actually put what it was. Oops.
Yeah, I just want to make note that it's also on the rules, under the definitions and stuff, so.
Yeah.
It's 5.
Yep. And those were put in a little while back.
I would say 6 too.
All right. Okay, so bylaws. Bylaws was an interesting topic because you've all gone through a whole lot of bylaws lately in terms of readings and that type of thing. And so we took that real serious in terms of, not to make it easy, because people would say, well, government's not easy, but to make it flow and to work for everybody. So originally, it's just proposed bylaws shall deal with one subject only and shall be introduced in writing in the form required for formal adoption. So we put a new paragraph in there. All proposed bylaws and repeals or amendments to current bylaws shall deal with one subject only and shall be submitted in writing to the office of the town clerk at least 14 days prior to the date of the first reading by the council. Any bylaw which repeals or amends part of the town bylaws shall set out in full the section or sections of the bylaws to be repealed or amended by the use of strikeout, type, brackets, and/or underscoring. All proposed or amended sections shall be set out in red. We felt that the 261, one line, and then she could have just handed something in and
Anything.
nobody would have known anything. This is pretty much standard in the political world or in the municipal government world and things, if you ever see stuff from the state, strikeouts and all that. 14 days was to give lots of notice. It's got to go to the town clerk. It's pretty substantial information there. 262, again, we struck out the line that said any bylaw which repeals or amends part of the town bylaws shall set out in full the section or sections proposed to be repealed or amended by the use of strikeout, type, brackets, and/or underscoring. Because again, it was just a separate line. There was a line, a separate line. Under 262, it now says, "Proposed bylaw shall deal with one subject only and shall be introduced in writing and in the form required for formal adoption. Town council shall ensure publication of the full text of every proposed bylaw on the town website and all pertinent public media." So that's really important because things have changed. It used to say at one in there, you had to put it into the newspaper, and which can be very, very expensive and all that. So since the town's website was the official, document, we chose that to list it in there in all pertinent public media. So if there was some other way to get it out there, it would get out there, but it wasn't specific. It was, pertinent public. Also, put it in as the town council shall ensure. Now, we're not saying that the town council, you independently, one of you, or the chair, make sure it gets published somewhere. We're saying that the town council as a whole, before they take up that agenda item, knows that it got published, whether the manager's office, the support staff, whatever, got it done for you. It's still the town council, because it's their bylaw in the end, who makes sure that, somebody asked that question, or make sure it got done before you put it on the agenda, or, whatever, because it's a town council who's going to vote on that bylaw, so you want to make sure you're doing it legally.
Yes.
Councilor
And
Steves.
I also think it's important to say that this section about bylaws, former member Mr. Smick, this is his baby. He did a lot of work with this, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
So we had some questions or comments first.
Mine was specifically in that last phrase, "and all pertinent public media," because there are, it could be argued that by that you mean you have to put it on TV, you have to put it in the radio, you have to put it in print, you have to put it on the website. Some of those may not even be available. I guess I think we need to be a little more specific about what that actually means somehow.
I guess kind of going off that, mine wasn't so much, the word pertinent is weird. I feel like, again, who determines what is pertinent and who is not, what's not? Also, all. Why all? I feel like it should be put into some form, if you're going to use pertinent media, like some form of pertinent media, so that way, for example, if the town website gets posted on the town website and the town's website automatically posts to social media, in my mind, that's considered a pertinent form of media because a lot of people use it. But in some, that may not. So I have some concerns about the all and the pertinent. I feel like those are very odd choices of words.
Well, you may want to recommend that you put a period after website. Because this is shall, again, this is not a may, town council shall ensure. So maybe town council just, shall ensure that it is posted to the website, since that is the town's designated posting place, is the town's website. So you may just want to put a period right after that. And then if the town council chooses to instruct that it be put in the paper or posted somewhere else, then that's up to the council.
Then maybe we should specifically
So
say that.
maybe that's something you want to consider.
And other locations as the council may determine.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
I don't know, that
Well, in our
sounds
discussion, we
reasonable.
had talked about the the town Facebook page, and those, that's where we considered all pertinent public media, was out, everybody posts things on Facebook and other social media. That's why we included that in there. If that's too general, then we can take that and just put a period on the website.
I share the same concerns though, because all pertinent, all means all.
Yeah,
So you could say
exactly.
any pertinent as deemed so by.
Yeah.
Just for the point of somebody trying to challenge it.
Yeah.
They would say, well, and you would end up, you may win, but it may get costly for a town, that somebody that chooses to say, hey, you said all, you didn't put it in all. So I agree with the period there, and to the town's website as the formal, and then add a second sentence that says, and any other local media as determined by council or something.
Yeah.
Does that work, Councilor? Does that
Everybody
work?
like that?
I don't know if the state would go for that one, because this says it's going to go through the state, so I don't know what their legal counsel would say in defining that as well, correct?
Well, the
Because
website is your,
That's
with
our
the Attorney
official-
General, that is your official posting place.
Right.
Right.
You could say
I'm
any
Should it
public
still be
media.
posted with the clerk's office too, for anybody who doesn't have electronic access? I didn't see
Exactly.
that.
Right, so the town, it has to be submitted to the town clerk's office, so it's always there
There's a
for
copy
review.
of the town.
Yeah,
All right.
that's
Has to
a-
go.
Because I've always thought, first and foremost, it has to be a copy with the clerk, so.
correct. It has to be actually filed with the clerk, yeah.
And I
In
think that's-
consideration to where we've been with posting in the newspaper, which doesn't get done,
Right.
been in violation for a long time.
Well, that is part of the
So,
problem, unfortunately.
this is part of the correction.
With the local newspaper system, being part of the local newspaper system. I know it's, you know, we all know that it doesn't get covered because I'm basically the only one who doesn't get covered. And it's conflict of interest for me to cover myself, so I don't. But the issue, of course, is for some people out there who may not have, as the manager mentioned, who don't have public or web internet access, you know, that may be the only way they get information is from print, from more traditional print media, or even from the radio, or that's why I brought those things up. And,
Or, right.
Yeah,
Or you
I
may
mean-
deem appropriate that you
Yeah.
put copies at the library, copies at the senior center. For those people to, you know, who may not feel comfortable with
right, exactly.
And
other means to see it that way.
Yeah, and individually, having that option individually, so one type might not be the same necessary for another, or maybe one, it's only a one-page thing and you don't mind printing, you know, hundreds of copies, but if it's a 100-page document, you don't want to print hundreds of copies. So therefore, you want to have that one copy. You say, we want to make sure we have it in the library or senior center or somewhere, you know, so leaving that open to council's determination makes sense.
Yeah, I remember that years ago, so a previous iteration of charter changes, they actually printed the entire charter in the newspaper before it went to the ballot. So it was a long text.
Yes. Counselor Adams, did you?
I was just gonna, I don't know, you guys already talked multiple times over this already, but I was just adding in here, when it, at the end of website, and may add to other public sources determined by the town council, just in one long sentence. And then that last part of the sentence after and is your option,
That makes sense.
optional site.
Can you repeat that?
So it'd be and may add to other public sources determined by the town council. That could be a library or public social media.
Yeah, to other public sources.
I know there's a lot of people in town that they don't go on Facebook, they don't go on the website. They get most of their information from the newspaper. And I noticed that this same thing is in 10.5.1 and 10.8.1. So I would prefer that the newspaper stays in there. And am I wrong, or is that state law?
It's, no.
It's not state
because-
law?
No, because the
Thought it was.
public became the website, because it became, it's cost prohibitive to continually, you know, to print a 10-page bylaw in the newspaper, which is what you're supposed to do. If you're going to have a bylaw change, it's supposed to be in its entirety
Well,
for
that's true.
publication, and that has not been happening
But the
for quite some
notices, I think, should
Notice,
stay
yeah.
in the newspaper.
Notices are a problem now, too, because the
Yeah.
paper comes out once a week.
Right.
And it also affects the timeline that we have to publish these things, like 14 days or 10 days or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't get done timely anymore that way. And that's why we had chosen the social media.
Or public media.
I'm not in disagreement with Councilor Marchetti. I understand why, because there are still a lot of people utilizing the print source. But, you know, if we also put it, you know, the town council make a sort of effort to put it in the paper. I know 14 days, but we only get it once a week here. So you can probably get one reading out of that for that. But the library, the police station, places that are open, you know, I don't see any other changes to that. I mean, it's a decision. I wouldn't say Facebook, because Facebook may die in a year from now, and then you may have some other type of source. But any public area, I believe it's option for the town council.
This is, I really wish we had more conversation during the year. It's good. 263, every bylaw, and in parentheses, we have proposed, repealed, or amended, shall be read at 3 separate meetings before its passage as follows. Don't get upset yet. It's as follows. It's a little different than what you've been doing. At the first meeting, every proposed bylaw change shall be read aloud in its entirety by the chair of the town council or his or her designee. Proposed bylaw amendment shall be read aloud in its entirety by section or sections. So if it's a brand new one, it's supposed to be read in full. If it's a section, you just have to read the section being changed. B, at the second meeting, A summary of every proposed bylaw change shall be read aloud by the chair of the town council or his or her designee. At the third meeting, all amendments shall be considered and voted upon, followed by a summary reading of the proposed bylaw change as amended by the chair of the town council or his or her designee. Does that make sense?
Well, the only thing is, what is a summary of a new bylaw? That would be my question. You have a new bylaw, how do you summarize that? You'd have to read the whole thing, right?
No, you're going to summarize it. Here's what we're looking to propose. This bylaw is going to include A, B, C, D. It's out there in its entirety for the reading, for 2 more weeks, where it's in the public areas to read in full. But you're going to summarize paragraphs. The town chair, whoever, is going to summarize what each section of, or line or paragraph of the new bylaw. You just, instead of reading 10 pages, this covers this. Maybe you have a department head summarize what the bylaw is
Okay.
about, right?
That
When it comes to
makes
stormwater management, or something like that.
All right.
A summary. And then the next one, it has to all do with the amendments. You save your amendments until then, and then you summarize, what that means, and then there's more. Okay. This is just about the readings.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that will, lately they're being recorders, home on a recorder and put it in here. Is that legal with the charter? I mean, do it at home, bring the tape and put it on, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, and I don't know that it's legal or illegal. You guys are, as the state will tell you, it's up to you to police your council, your charter. It's up to you to enforce it or not. I mean, obviously, if there's some real crazy continual instances, the state would step in. But the reality is, if that's something you all agreed to, it's just skirting probably perhaps what's consistent, what has or hasn't been done. It's better than nothing, in that respect. And kudos to the people who take the time to read it and make that happen. I can't tell you, from what I read in charter, it's supposed to be read 3 times. Whether it gets done or not.
I would say that under those circumstances, it is being read 3 times by a designee of the council.
Right.
It may be a counselor, it might, like in that last thing we did was Matt did it, but it was read in its entirety. So anybody who wanted to listen to it all the way through, they would get it all.
Yeah. Now, I don't remember, did you do it? I know I did not watch the bylaw readings, I'm going to be honest. So
Nobody else.
it was just inserted right into the middle of a meeting, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remember. Yeah.
He recorded in advance, and we just stuck it in when he came in.
Yeah.
So
then
it
that
was
does
still
this
being
to a
read.
meeting,
Yeah. As long as it went out intact, it was being read, so. And I was thinking that would tie into, maybe I was thinking of throwing this phrase in, for the purposes of this section, designee may include the use of pre-recorded video or audio. What do the rest of you think about that?
Now, regarding, say, bylaw change should be read, and its entires, they can only read what changed, not the entire,
Right, if you've already got a bylaw, and you're only changing a paragraph or 2 lines or something, you're changing the hours of snow removal from, 8 to 12. You only have to read that paragraph.
only that, you don't have to read.
You don't have to read the whole thing. You don't have to read the lines, whatever it is right there, that section, the section or paragraph. Not an entire bylaw, unless it's being, unless you're doing something to the whole thing.
Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, I've been following the Charter Review Committee meetings, and in particular, I know you, as it's shown here, you guys did a lot of work on this particular section, and I greatly appreciated it. That section of the charter needed to be modernized. It was a lot, as you know, former councilor comments, that reading some of these bylaws can take a lot of time, and having to do it through 3 times in its full entirety is a lot. And this makes it easier. It also makes it easier for the public to understand, because a lot of people aren't going to understand the jargon that's in a bylaw. So providing an actual summary of what it does will make it easier for the public to consume that information and understand what's happening. So not only does this modernize the procedure, it makes it easier for the public to understand. And I was greatly impressed by everything, including the idea of moving it, which we talk about later in this, to another meeting, which makes so much more sense. So, I wanted to thank you all for this, because this was a lot of work, and it's definitely needed, in my opinion.
So it also took into account people get, they tune out, right? You're reading 10 pages of bylaw, who's paying attention anyway by the end? I think the recordings and posting them, when you talk about posting the bylaw other places, well, why not post a live recording and let that run on a regular basis on your cable channels or on YouTube's, so people could, on their own free will, go in and pick up where they left off or something. I still would encourage that. We're not going to put that in your charter, but I just think from the citizens' point of view, that's a great way to be able to get that information and see what changes happen. So,
I would agree with that.
so kudos to reading it and being willing to do that for the public. I think that's a good thing, how you use it. All right, so.
One more
sorry.
follow-through with that one is that I agree with what you just said. I also agree with what Jackie just said. One concern I have is that when it comes to talking about the idea of summarizing the bylaw, the key problem with that is that specific words in law matter. As we've talked about the shall versus may thing, and that kind of stuff happens with law all the time. And I was wondering if maybe since these bylaws have to go through the town attorney anyway, do we want to require the summary to be drafted by the town attorney? I mean, because we've been doing it ourselves. I think you drafted the summary last time, right? Or Jack did, whoever did it last time. And I think that, I think most people the common sense understanding of what the law says versus what the lawyer's sense of the law says may be two different things.
I think the other thing you want to remember is that you're giving the citizens generally 6 to 8 weeks, maybe more, depending on your meetings, how you're splitting things up or when you're putting it. At some level, you got to put the onus on the citizen to pick up a copy or get, and get more information too. I mean, because, at least, again, just my opinion. You read the full thing, you summarize a bit. A lawyer can summarize any way they want sometimes too, just saying. And then you move on. So whether you want to spend the money, that's up to council. Council wants to spend the money on a legal summary, that's certainly, I think it's a summary. You guys can figure out how you want that summary to be, or the future council could figure that out, I guess. If a chair feels really strong on the subject matter, or that a department head could step in as their designee and do that, I don't know why you need to pay the lawyer, especially if a department head has a good grasp on something.
I would hope they would. I can just picture somebody saying,
Again.
well, I based what I did on base of the summary of this law, and my lawyer says this is wrong.
Yeah, well, you don't want to put
I don't want it to
opinion
get
into
into that
summary.
point. Because I think most laws should be written in ways that the average person can understand clearly.
So again,
just occurred to
if you move forward on this, you've got your third reading, which then becomes the amendments and a summary again, and you'll notice at that point, you're still not adopting this bylaw.
Right.
We're going to make that, I'm going to make that statement because you're right now in violation somewhat. You have a bylaw, you have the bylaws, which have their own how to enact a bylaw in them, and you have the charter, which has enacting bylaws, and technically you're inconsistent because as we just discovered in researching a little bit, the bylaws themselves say that you're supposed to wait 14 days for them to become enacted, and there have been a number of bylaws that get read and then boom, it's happening the next week. So we tried to make sure that there's that span of time also for appeals or for what's the word? It's not appeal, it's like appeal.
Challenge.
The challenges, yeah, but we have our section back here, where the citizens have so many days. How can they have so many days to appeal the vote of a council if they didn't have so many days because you already started acting on that bylaw? So we found inconsistencies of common practice now, as opposed to what's in the writing. And we tried to take that into account as we were, especially this particular item. This is one of our longest items, probably. So I'm making that statement so you understand where that comes from. So you'll see going down, the final adoption shall occur at the next regularly scheduled town council meeting. Publication of the final law or measure shall be posted on the town's website within 24 hours of the newly adopted bylaw or measure. No new amendments shall be allowed at that meeting and published. So again, now you've got your amendments. When you on your third reading or your third summary and reading such, that's where you make the amendments and you come up with your final form. And when it comes time to finally vote on it and all, that's it. You're not changing that. If you don't like something, now you should start all over and do something else, just because what you're going to now vote on is what's there. You can't make an amendment anymore. You should have, if there was a problem between that meeting and that final adoption, it shouldn't be put on the agenda. You should go back and do another amendment meeting or something. You know, you should not be trying to change it at that final time where you've all come into, or not agreement, you're voting yea or nay or whatever, but that's not the time. It's, you know, beforehand would have been the time. If it's going to be the final public adoption and publication, that should be it. It's what it is. You take the vote. If it passes, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So.
I just want to talk, something you mentioned earlier, you said this could take 7 to 8 weeks depending on, in the current, reading through this, actually, the final one is the only one, the final adoption is the only one that says regularly scheduled meeting. If the chair so wanted, he could schedule 3 meetings in a week as this is written and get it done within a week or two. So I don't know if that was your intent, but based on, this just says meeting, while the next line says next regularly scheduled meeting.
Right.
So I just wanted to.
And the purpose for that is because, as Ms. Clemens said, in the bylaws, it says that you need to have 14 days for an appeal period. So that's the only reason why we say next regularly scheduled meeting, because normally your regularly scheduled meetings are 2 weeks apart. So you're right, you could do 3 weeks, you know, one every week for the first 3, but then after you've done all your amendments, and that is what you're going to adopt, that should be what the people, have the ability to then review and file an appeal if they so choose. To give them that 14 days.
So it was your intent to make sure that the first 3 were a little more flexible in the
Correct.
amount of to when they could be posted. So like I said, you could post all 3 meetings in 1 week if you wanted, and then the next, in 2 weeks from that time, you could have your meeting for the final adoption. I wouldn't recommend that, but that's something that could be done.
I don't think we considered 3 in 1 week.
Right.
But
No, but it could, could happen.
Unless you want
that's the way I'm
something
reading it. So I wanted to put that out there because it could be as quick as a couple of weeks if they so chose.
Yeah, I guess I was erring on the side of, you know, normalcy. But you're right. But no matter what, there's an appeal process that's supposed to be adhered to. So even if you push it out in a week, you can't do it for 2. And it can't be effective until, you know, so.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. I certainly like the way that's laid out, but I just caution, even if we adopted a bylaw and voted the final passage on the last meeting, by the charter, it doesn't become effective for 14 days. So regardless, even if we took the vote on the 3rd day, the charter specifically outlines the fact that it does not become effective. So irregardless of whether we vote the 3rd meeting or not, the charter spells out you have 14 days. So it's not enacted for 14 days, even if we voted it that day. That's in Charter 12.4. 12.4 spells it right out that says that nothing will be enacted for 14 days.
Yeah, but it's not that. That has to do with the referendum vote.
No,
Isn't
it
it?
says.
Where are you at, 12.4?
It says a vote passed, but then it says, or adopted a new bylaw or amended an existing bylaw shall not be operative until after the expiration of 14 days.
Right.
The charter spells it out.
Right, so it's.
Doesn't matter that it's referendum, but it says they have the right to do a referendum to appeal.
So it's 14, right? It's 14.
Huh?
So what I'm trying to say is, you're right you're absolutely right. After the vote, it doesn't take effect for 14 days. After the final vote.
Correct.
Right.
So what we
You're
said is
you're
between the 3rd reading, between the 3rd reading though, final adoption, there's an adoption, but then it doesn't take effect. There's an effective taking and there's an adoption, right? Isn't that the?
Right.
So
But
final.
you're saying there's 4 meetings to adopt it, which I totally agree with because, you know, sometimes something will be added that 3rd meeting. You want to make sure that you have the clean copy. But irregardless, even if you vote on that final adoption, it's not going to take place for 14 days after that final adoption.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying there, Counselor.
Yeah.
But there was something.
So regardless of what I'm saying is, either way, we weren't violating any charter or anything by voting on the 3rd day because the charter specifically says you had 14 days before it became enacted.
Right, but if I may, so we say final adoption shall occur at the next regular scheduled meeting.
Right.
Okay? That's where you make the vote.
Correct. Still not going to become effective for 14 days.
But we're giving you
Correct.
14 days between C and then 264,
Right.
the regular
But
scheduled
it
meeting.
doesn't matter, it's still 14 days after
It's
your
14
final
days, so
adoption.
it's 28 days.
Right,
in
Yes.
correct, yeah.
What do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I get you. I like how it's spelled out.
Yeah, so it's actually 2 weeks to
Yeah,
get to
no,
that vote, and
yeah.
2 weeks to get to
Yeah.
enactment, to official
Right.
enactment. Right, no, yeah, there was a
Yeah.
purpose to that, yeah.
I just want to go back to 262,
So it still
Where-
takes 6 weeks, 5 weeks.
where we have the two council showing short publication of the text. You put this in the charter, but it's already in the bylaws. It says how you will enact bylaws.
It is.
So why would, I mean, why is it in the charter as well? Because our bylaws spell out how you will enact bylaws, which it doesn't say that you have to publicize the whole bylaw. All it says is that you will publish in the newspaper that you are enacting a bylaw or you're taking action.
Well, in the charter, the original charter, it says that any bylaw should be set out in full, the sections or sections to be repealed, amended by use or strikeout. Let's see, where's the rest of it?
But there's nothing in the existing charter that says anything about publication.
About publication.
So why are we adding it to the charter if our bylaws already specifically spell out how we will enact bylaws?
Maybe that's why we could.
Because we think it's important to be in the charter. It's that important, and it's kind of belt and suspenders, I guess. Because in reviewing the bylaws, there were a lot of things that this charter and the bylaws were not
In conflict,
consistent.
yeah, in
Right, they were in
conflict,
conflict. So we felt that it was important enough, that piece of it, the publication of it. Going through this entire charter, we thought about the residents and the importance of getting information to residents, and especially things like this that directly affect them. And the adoption of bylaws directly affect our residents. So we just felt it was important to put it in the charter also.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You'll notice too, sometimes when you see a recommended change, you'll see January, you'll see February, then you might see October, because we went back over again, and
No.
there was those kinds of constant back and forth, but doesn't have to be. Final adoption. And then we changed, so under 264, you'll notice the notes, 264 is removed completely, becomes 265, because we felt it was important to put that final adoption in there. And then the 265, the affirmative vote of at least 5 members unless a greater number is prescribed by general laws or by this charter shall be necessary for the passage of any bylaw or measure, and all votes thereon shall be taken by roll call and recorded in the journal.
So, when you say that, though, if you have a council of 6 people that show up at a meeting, and we want to do a transfer, and there's only 6 members here, that's a measure,
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
right? So any action that the council takes, you're going to need 5 members to vote affirmatively. But I don't think, I certainly believe on bylaws, but any measure that we take, I can't agree to that one, because that would just hamper the government if you had resignations and people that, so any action we take, you're going to need
Then you're
5
saying
members.
if 5 people show up, 3 people speak for the community out of the 9 that were elected.
If that's all that shows up to a council meeting in order to get council business to do transfers and all that, I would say serious measures, I probably would vote to postpone. But if we want to do the day-to-day business of this council, and people choose not to show up because they don't like something that's on the agenda, for whatever reason, we've seen that in the past, not this current council, but we've seen it in the past, where people just, I'm not showing up because I don't want anything to do,
Yes.
and I want a transfer to go through, or I want some other measure to go through that's routine business. I fully agree on bylaws and that, but just any measure, no.
Oh,
I agree with that.
so to that point, this was early discussion with our full committee. I'll just comment on it.
Okay.
I would say that I agree with Jack, too, and also point out that by putting that in or measure, and the way we define measure back in the first section, any enactment, vote, resolution, or motion basically means everything needs to be done by roll call,
Yeah, so.
I also just kind
except
of
maybe adjournment.
quickly reading through this, no, never mind.
Yeah.
I solved my own question.
So I have no problem with it saying as bylaw. I think it makes
Yeah,
sense.
I-
As bylaws.
Yeah,
The
bylaws,
major
absolutely.
stuff, and it should be done that way, but I don't think we need every measure
Yeah,
done that way.
nope,
You want us to remove the measure?
no worries.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Slow down.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question, so if we go back to 253, where was mistake 6, now it's 5. So before you guys suggest depend on the agenda to be able to get 5 vote or less. So what's the difference now on the one we speak right now, 264 or 265, whatever is that?
Well, and something like this 265 that we're on,
But
if you require at least 5 votes,
Correct, but
I know the planning board,
253, you haven't, we
I
just
know, I saw
discussed it a little while ago, saying, depend on what kind of agenda, you need 5 or 3 to move on. So now you're saying you need whatever show up, so,
No, certain agenda items require a two-thirds vote of an entire council.
right.
So if you have 9, that means you need a 7 vote of the, you need a 6
but
vote.
now
of
he's saying to move the item, whatever councilor is here to vote, and it's yes to move on. So now it's gonna be an argument between that section and the other section, no?
No. That says that a quorum, it takes 5 to start a meeting. You can even meet, say you have an agenda item that requires that majority of a whole, a two-thirds vote of a whole. You could come in, you could sit, you could call the meeting, but then you could say, sir, we only have 1 agenda item, or we have 5 agenda items, and the first 4 we can handle, but the last one requires specific voting rules by the state or whatever, that's a financial matter or something, and you have to have that extra person, you have to have those extra people in there to do that vote. So then you just, you can't take that vote. You can do everything else, you just can't take that particular vote. There's a few instances, budget type items and stuff.
Taking money out of the stabilization account, for example,
Yeah,
requires a
taking money,
two-thirds
right.
vote of all members.
Yeah, I have to think back on it.
Yeah, there's a few cases under state law. I don't know if it applies to a council form of government, but I know I've seen town meetings where they have to require 9/10 votes.
Correct.
I don't think it's ever come up for us. But I was thinking that as far as that section goes, I know that there, for example, like the planning board and so forth, they have had to tell people that are in front of them that are you willing to go forward because you need to have all 5 votes, and there's only 5 people there that day. It's kind of a catch-22 because I don't see this happening. This hasn't happened with our council. It hasn't happened in some time, but I could see it theoretically happening where a council has only 5 people that show up and they purposely push through things that that have majority votes, that they have all 5 votes on it. As you pointed out, it's kind of an issue with like Robert's Rules of Order. If only 5 people are there, 3 is a majority. So I do agree that that's a problem, and you don't want 3 ever to be a majority of the council.
So I would argue that point, because I used to argue that point a lot, was that when it comes to how you define your body, whether it's a body of the whole or a body of the part that shows up for, you have to define that. Well, a quorum can meet and open a meeting. Sometimes, even if it's just much to your dismay, according to this, we are Robert's Rules of Order, and if you read Robert's Rules of Order, you better determine on how it is you're supposed to vote on your committee, because generally it's by so you can have 5 people meet, but you got to have 5 positive votes. There depends on the body and how you define yourself within Robert's Rules of Order. Just saying, I'm not going to tell you this minute what that is, but
That's true.
certainly, to the point, you shouldn't have just 3 people or whatever. I don't care that it screws it up, and the public will see and not vote for those people, or they recall those people, because people have to show up for meetings at some point. You can't be always absent. Yeah. That's why we have the rule to, if people, we've had it. We've had people die, we've had people be sick, we've had people just not show, and sometimes you just can't hold business. So it's tough. That's why we have that thing. If you're less a man down within so many days, you got to have a special election because body has to work. There's some debate on that, Mr. Dow, Councilor Dow.
Yep.
But for this moment, we're not debating it. Okay. All right. So measure is out, and I do that again. That was something that came up way early on in the bylaw discussion. So, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. No, that's
Tell him to speak
just
up.
hiding over here. Just, I noticed you guys got away from journal, so I didn't know if you wanted to change journal to minutes.
Minutes?
Yeah.
I had that same thing.
Just to
here,
clarify.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's hard to see over there at the kids' table.
It's hard to sit at the kids' table. My knees are on. Look at my knees.
Okay. So again, if you like the rest of that, that's you guys can figure it out. Let us know, whatever. Going through the 292 is the next area. 292, chairperson shall provide at the meetings of the town council, shall be recognized as the head of the town government for all ceremonial purposes. And we struck out the line, and by the governor of the Commonwealth in the case of an emergency, and shall be the point of contact in case of an emergency, excuse me. And instead we added, and shall be the point of contact on behalf of the town council in the case of an emergency. It just is, times have changed. In all, this line goes way back to first charter. And the reality is, when there's an issue, the head of the government generally is the town manager in terms of the day-to-day operational things. The chair gets, depending on the situation, you may or may not get contacted on certain things when it comes to the governor's office. So the reality is, you're the head of government ceremonial purposes, and in an emergency, shall be the point contact on behalf of the council. So yes, that's still the important thing, but, is the governor going to just contact the chairperson? I don't, maybe, maybe not. And so.
And again, it's important that individual serves as the point of contact on behalf of the town council. Because on behalf of the town, you have the town manager, and you also have an emergency management director, whoever your EMD is.
Right.
That person, in the case of an emergency, is the state's contact. MEMA's contact, FEMA's contact, is that person.
Right.
Not the town manager, not the chairman of the town council.
Right.
So.
I think the way what you were just saying and the way it was written, I assume you meant to take out the first reference of in the case of emergency. Because otherwise it duplicates and doesn't make any
Yeah, you
sense.
should have it stricken out.
Because it looks like it's
You have
it's
in case of
changed the
emergency
whole
and shall.
wording.
Do we not
of it.
strike it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's not straight.
And I have to say, I totally agree with this, because having gone through the recent state of emergency, what did it mean to be the town council chairman and head of government? There's nothing defined that says what your roles are as a head of government. What actions can you take? What actions can't you take? I mean, it was kind of clumsy, to say the least.
And it's been taken out of context, I think, in the past times. So I think it's just more clear this way. Like more, it just wasn't struck in the,
Right, okay.
in the case of, so, because in the case is at the end. So I was reading it. Similar person says, and shall be the point. Yeah, we just missed a strike. Okay. Moving on, 293. 293 was interesting, because it was very simple, but we threw in the debated and because technically if you're going to, a chairperson may be removed by the said office by 2/3 vote of the entire council, i.e. a minimum of 6 votes. See, there's kind of a vote thing, Councilor Dow, where it specifies it. No matter who shows, it's still going to be a 2/3 of the entire council. Any member of the town council at any point may make a motion to remove the chairperson, and if the motion is seconded, the motion shall be voted upon at that time without exception by the town council. It just, like most things, it wasn't you didn't call what's the word I want to say, when you vote, you didn't move the question. This was something important, and if you're going to remove the chairperson, perhaps a debate on it is not a bad idea. Let all the government speak and not just, whatever it is that,
That should be added in 295 too, then.
Yeah, I thought we did.
No. You have the motion.
That should be
Sure,
added
yeah,
there, too.
it probably did get transcribed over that. Yep.
I would also, since now you guys are recommending that we appoint a clerk of the body, should technically the clerk be subject to the same rules as the chair and vice chair and be subject to removal by a 2/3 vote at any time? And shouldn't that be included under here as well?
You can.
I mean, I'm just trying to be uniform in how this is done, right? And so you're saying that a clerk should be appointed, like any other officer listed here, they should be applicable to the same rules as anyone, right? Just trying to be clear and concise.
Yeah, you can add that definitely if you want. We thought it was
But
important, the debated, or I do anyway, coming and having that conversation. If you take such an extreme measure as this, removing the chairman, that debate, discussion happen at a public forum.
Yeah.
I agree.
These, it's sad to say, but many times these kind of things happen behind the scenes, and they should really be if you feel that strongly about it, then state your case in public for the public to consume.
Who's going to moderate the debate? If the chair is being removed in the motion, should the chair be moderating the debate?
Yeah, he's still the chairman.
Until it's voted on to remove you, you are still the chairman.
Okay.
Uncomfortable.
You can't get out of it, John. You can't get out of it.
Good question.
Nobody gonna move.
Well, I mean, I think.
Nice try, John.
And rules of debate. You know, and, you know, unfortunate as it is, it's point of orders and appeal of the rulings and all that stuff, so, you know.
But the way it was vague as to the, general, like, that's it. It seemed like it was more of a move the question move.
Yeah.
And that just seemed not quite.
And an all-out blatant open meeting law violation
That
because,
too.
okay, obviously the debate happened somewhere else at some other time and not at a public meeting. So this is to make it look like that didn't happen.
Right.
That makes sense.
All right, so on that section, the only thing we did was the 295, again, the minimum of 6, and the debated on should be in there, absolutely. Let's see, Chapter 3, general provisions. All we did there was add 7, we spelled it out, 7 members of a school committee, 2 members of a regional voc, 1 town clerk. We thought it was important that it was spelled out.
This one's almost like a typo, though, doesn't it look like a typo? Looks like a typo to me.
What?
7 members of school committee.
There's an of missing. Two
Oh, it's because it's spelled out.
Oh, of
A
a,
and B are opposite.
7 members of school committee, it should just be a 7-member
Should
school.
be of
Can I just read 7 school committee members?
We'll just put 7-member school committee.
7-member school committee, 2-member.
Yeah.
oh, maybe the
Well,
A
no,
doesn't.
because it's a 7-member school committee, 2 members of a regional vocational school committee.
Right.
I'd have to have arguments too.
Okay, I got it.
It's okay.
1 town clerk. Do any towns have more than 1 clerk?
I don't think so.
We
Well,
just-
everything else is
We just
spelled
spelled
out.
everything out.
Since everything else was, we added the 1 in. Because 4 was there for the 4 members, the 2 part-time, we just, 1 town clerk, just to be specific. You never know, somebody might want more than 1.
Do we know that the school committee, Bay Path, will always be 2 members? Could that ever change at some point? No?
Each community has 2 representatives that are given proportional votes based on the population of that community to adhere to one-man, one rule. This was done specifically to avoid any issues around, say Southbridge has more people than Dudley, right? So they're going to have 5 or 6 members compared to Dudley's 1. So no, each community gets the same amount of people representing it, but they have different proportional votes based on the population breakdown.
All right.
I would just make sure everything's spelled out as far as the numbers are concerned.
Rather than the numbers.
Keep it uniform, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Some are words, some are numbers.
Yeah, it
that's true.
does stand out like that.
Yeah, for consistency.
Let's see, 3.1, general and this charter and bylaws. Yeah, it wasn't and or, it's not or bylaw, when it comes to the boards and commissions established, shall perform their function duties in accordance with the constitutional general laws, this charter, and bylaws. It's not or the bylaws, it's and the bylaws, it's all one. It's not, you don't have a choice. You can't choose. 3.1.4, again, same idea as what just went through Ms. Marchetti when we talked about it. Members of a board or committees established under the charter may be reimbursed for actual expenses incurred in the performance of their official duties from an annual appropriation made for such purposes.
That's exactly what it says
Yeah, that one makes
previously.
sense.
It's just making it the same.
Right. So, vacancies, filled by a majority vote of the town council and joint. We just added the by a majority vote, again, just to spell things out in case there's a question. as to
So,
what that means.
a question, because we were talking about Bay Path, this makes me think of Bay Path. Should it say remaining members of the respective board or the members because the way I look at that, it says technically, does that mean we meet with the entire Bay Path School Committee, not just the Southbridge members?
Which one are you on?
We're 3.2.1? Town
So-
boards. So,
But, I mean, we do this for the Bay Path as well, so should there be some specific, because we only have 2 members of the Bay Path, we don't meet with the entire Bay Path School Committee, we only meet with the Southbridge members of the Bay Path School Committee.
But if there was an appointment that was required to be made to the Bay Path School Committee, one of our 2 members, there was 1 vacancy.
Yep.
It would be a majority of the Bay Path School Committee and the town council.
So the way it's been done, it's only been the 1 Southbridge member that's been here, because I got appointed by that way, and it was the Helen Lenti up here and nobody else. No other Bay Path.
So maybe that's spelled out in their rules, that might be a different animal. It might be spelled out in their rules how that's done.
But in our rules, it's a majority of the council that joined with BayPAC.
The only question I had about this one is the town council has 30 days or 100, within 30 days of the regular town election, or 180 days, and this one is 60 days, or if the town election occurs within 120. So do you think they should be consistent with the town council, or? I think there was a problem the last time, and I can't recall exactly what it was, but we were replacing 3, and one of them may not have qualified to be replaced because it wasn't within the time limit. It was something like that. So I'm just wondering if it should be consistent with the way we do the town council. Town council is 30 days or 180 days.
Well, we also can't appoint a new member to the town council either, like we're appointing a member to the other boards.
Right.
So
That's
I think
true,
that's,
yeah.
Yeah, we didn't change the rest of the language, it's just been like that. So it's moving on, 331, terms for the 2 members of the vocational school committee. We put in the word 2 members. Let's see, anything else?
Can I just go back?
Oh, sorry.
You added by majority vote of the town council
And
In joint
in
convention.
joint convention, right? So does that mean majority vote of both bodies or the majority of the total?
no, it's a majority of the total,
Of the total.
correct.
With the remaining members.
Yeah, because it's in joint convention,
Right.
town council
You're-
in
you're-
joint convention.
Right. So
with
you're
the
meeting as
members.
one body.
The problem that we had was getting quorums for that other body.
We didn't need it, you just needed a quorum of your whole convention.
Okay, so,
Is-
well, what's the
wait,
quorum of
did I
the
say
whole
that wrong?
convention?
Well, no, because they
So if we
would
have
need to hold a
9
meeting.
members-
2 meetings together, right?
And they have, so I'm going to talk about the school committee.
Right.
They have 9, we have 9, they have 7, that's 16, right? All 9 of us show up, all 9 of us councils show up, so we have a quorum of the joint convention. Does
Right.
that constitute the meeting?
That's what you're saying.
No, because you're posting a meeting,
To
to have a joint convention, you post a meeting of the council and you
Right,
post a
and
meeting
it-
of that
correct.
other board.
Two
So that other
As a
board would
joint
need a
meeting.
quorum to meet.
Well, see, the only reason I asked that, because that question came up. What constitutes the quorum? Because they couldn't they only had 4 members left. And that's their quorum, is
that's
4, they only had 3 show up.
It does
Hold
say
on.
with remaining members of respective board. It doesn't say that remaining board has a quorum. It says with remaining members. So if you're telling me all they had left out of 9 was 3 or something.
But the question is, what does their quorum constitute? Does their quorum of the school committee constitute 7 members to constitute a quorum of a school committee meeting?
But it doesn't tell you need a quorum of the school committee. It just says you need.
But
the
you're
ma-
calling a joint meeting, you're
Right,
calling a
you're
school
calling it-
committee meeting, and you're calling a town council meeting,
So can they even meet?
to make it a joint meeting. I just throw that out as something that we have to think about, because that became the issue. So we said, okay, 3 out of the 4 remaining members showed,
But isn't the whole point that?
they don't have a quorum, but we have a quorum.
But isn't that the point of needing to fill a vacancy? Is it sometimes you might not have them? Well, first off, there are emergency meetings you can do when you don't have quorums.
But it wasn't an emergency meeting, it was a regular meeting,
Right, but if they
fully
could.
posted.
No, that's not what I meant. You can have meetings of less than a quorum if it's a situation where you cannot get, you know, the state doesn't look favorably on that all the time, but what they tell you is if you've gone consistently without a member, you got a planning board, you got something where you just can't get members.
Well, yeah, for them, they can do a meeting of necessity.
Right,
But when we specifically call a joint meeting, and their quorum does not show up,
Then something we
You
don't
have
have
to
to
call
debate
it.
tonight. I think it's
Yeah.
something we have to
It's something
think
you
through.
should talk to
We
the
should
state
think
about,
through.
I
With the
think.
I just throw that
remaining
out because
They-
that was the quandary.
They had a quorum of the remaining members,
Yeah.
but they didn't have a quorum of their
Of their
entire
entire
committee.
membership. So did that constitute a meeting or not?
According to this,
Yeah,
it did.
yeah, because now your votion is a majority, your votion. Your vote.
No, the question is,
Yeah, but he said
what
they,
constitutes the quorum?
Right.
It's a joint meeting.
yeah.
You posted a school committee meeting, you
He
posted a
just
town
said there was a
council meeting.
quorum of the members of the school committee. There was no quorum of the school committee.
entire
Of their entire school committee. They didn't have a quorum of their entire membership.
Okay.
So does that constitute a meeting or not? Something to think about, I just throw that out.
No, that's a great point, because we had this.
We had this
issue for a
conversation,
long
and
time.
That is a
And,
good point.
I mean, for me, it doesn't make sense to have a joint meeting and then only have 9 of us show up and say
Right.
none of the school committee members show up. Technically, the way this is written, we posted a joint meeting, we could vote and move on it, but I don't feel that would be appropriate because we don't have any school committee member input.
I think that would have been one for the AG's office, where you would have called and said, look, we want to know how to post this, because you've told us before that we should post. No, I'm serious. They're pretty good about certain things. You say, we don't have it. We just don't have, there is no member, there's no, any
Well,
elected.
no, they have the members, they just chose not to show up.
Oh,
So they had 4 members.
okay, I'm
So that's
thinking
the
you.
question.
I thought there was a time when they didn't even have
No,
members,
they had
remember?
none.
So can you move?
They had 4 members.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's another good question.
In fact, I recommended that they contact the AG's office at the time. I don't know if he did or not,
It
but
was a little late.
But anyway,
Charter looks good on this question.
that does raise the question, though. So do we clarify a little bit? Because I've seen some boards, some joint meetings do it differently. Sometimes they will take individual votes of both committees. We have typically done it as a joint vote of everybody who's here.
Right, that's what it says.
That's what you intended.
So my question here, Mr. Chair, real quick, is you say remaining members. So if the school board has 4, but 3 show up, is that remaining? You're still missing one. Do you have to have all 4? Do you have to have all 5 or all 6 that are actually still on that board?
The way it reads here, it's the remaining members.
Every person that's
Would
got
you like to
heartbeat
put it
that's
as
on
a
that
quorum
board,
of the
right.
members of that committee?
That would make more sense. Yeah.
I mean, now's the time to fix
Yeah.
this. This is up
Yes.
to you.
Right.
How do you want to handle this?
That
So,
would
you know,
make sense,
if this
yeah.
is an issue, then let's talk about it and come up with something so there is none of this anymore. And it's completely spelled out.
So that, it's easy enough to add that, because you have town council and joint convention with a quorum of the members of the respective board.
That makes sense.
Well, you already said that it's, okay, yeah, you're right, the majority vote of it.
the quorum of whatever board of each board has to be present.
Yeah.
But that was the problem. They only had 4 members. 3 members resigned. So 4 was a quorum of that entire committee.
Right.
So all 4 had to show up, but we only got 3. So that
And
was,
that's the catch-22, because
Could I just say this?
don't exist.
You couldn't have the town council portion of that meeting, Counselor Jovan, if you didn't have a quorum of the town council at that point. So it says it's a town council in joint convention with the remaining members. The question is, define remaining members, that'd be a quorum of the remaining members.
Yep.
Whereas the town council, the meeting's just not going to happen if you don't have a
I think it's
quorum.
something we have to think through and
Yeah, but I
come up
do
with some
think-
guidance,
think
with
the-
somewhere to think about it
I think
and say.
If that's
quorum
what
of the
you want.
remaining members.
That's
That's not a bad idea.
That's not a bad idea. And the
What's that?
fact is, now you have down to 3 or 4 members and 3 show up, or 3 and then you got 2 that show up. And if you got 1, that's a majority.
A majority of the remaining
Yeah,
members.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't agree with taking it off the hands of the board to say that, nobody shows up that night from there, and then we start picking and choosing who we want to sit on that board at that point. We overrule, yeah, I got it, but it would be overruling those boards, so, yeah, I'm not opposed to the majority of remaining members of that board,
Majority of the remaining members of the respective board.
of a respective
Yeah.
board.
Convention with a majority of the remaining members of the respective
Right.
board.
Okay,
Okay?
that seemed to make sense.
Okay.
Let's see, moving over. 2-member. Oh, well, yeah, we moved down, didn't we?
3-1.
Thank you. Let's see, appointments and qualifications, 4 and 1. So, in this one, let's see, council by majority vote of the full membership, i.e. minimum of 5 votes, again, there's that thing, shall appoint And originally it said, "A town manager shall be administrator and implement the directives of the policies of the council." Okay. That was a problem because we had a charter, in here it says, shall appoint, yeah. In the other section, it says appointment or reappointment, as the case may be. Well, it was argued, how can you have reappointment? How can you even have that in your charter if there is no reappointment? So we added this into this section just to make sure it was very clear. Shall appoint or reappoint, as the case may be, a town manager who shall administer and implement directives and policies adopted by the council according to Chapter 44, Section 108N. That's state.
That's just the statute with regard to
That should
the,
just be a
Right.
mass generalized.
So we were very fortunate, having Pam on the committee, she brought a lot into this, as you'll see going forward when it comes to state stuff. So we thought that was important because it's part of state rules of how it is. Moving over, in seeking candidates, that's 412. Let's see, council, 3 of whom shall be, it's talking about the members of the town manager search committee. Members of 3 of whom shall be citizens of the town who are not holding elective office, are chosen on the basis of their proven expertise in hiring upper-level management, and are not compensated employees of the town. So we put in, we added back the "are chosen on the basis." That, I believe, came out of the old charter, correct? We referred back a number of times to the charter of, where is it? Original 73, technically 74 when it was readopted, which has had changes through the years. A lot of times we would look back at the charter previous to this one in 15 that was changed. Not a lot was changed there. And then we would refer back to the original, because I was always trying to figure out why things changed, or did they change. That line was in there, and I think that's a good line. We felt it was a good line, that it should stay in there or be back. Next paragraph, committee made its discretion, subject to appropriation for sufficient funds by the town council, engage legal consultant. And we crossed off the rest because it was, let's see,
it's the
Counselor
committee
Joanne.
telling the town council, you shall appropriate funds.
and that's not how it works.
Okay, there's a couple of things in here that kind of jump out at me. First off, it was the way you phrased it is, and are not, I know that you didn't change that section, are not compensated employees of the town. As I recall, weren't you on a town manager search committee at one point, Yvonne?
Me, no.
You weren't. Because I think there may be actually a call for having at least one department head on a town manager search committee, since they have to work with the town manager. I know other communities often do that.
I mean,
it is kind of, I can understand it's kind of weird, I can see your expression, where the employee is helping to pick their own manager. And I understand that. That does seem a little bit odd. But many communities have a designated seat or two for department heads because they're the people who have to work with the manager. So they have to, and they have the insight to see how the town operates from inside, whereas the other people that you're choosing from the community should have the insight to see how organizations operate from the outside. And maybe from the inside themselves, but in their own organizations. So I was wondering about that. And also, where you phrase the change here for engage a legal consultant, the way that's phrased, it seems to imply that you need to get a lawyer involved and not a search firm. And you may not want to have a lawyer involved.
It says it may, not
Yeah, I
shall.
know. And it says
But it
may,
says legal consultant.
but it's
I see
legal
what you mean. So
consultant.
don't
I
know
wouldn't
why
interpret that as a search firm.
Shouldn't that
I would
just say
interpret that as a
professional
lawyer.
search firm?
Yeah, I don't know where legal consultant is.
That should probably say professional search firm.
Because that's what it originally said, yeah.
Yeah, that's what that probably should say,
Yeah,
yeah.
for the moment.
So you're
Counselor
crossing out
Jovan.
legal consultant and going back to
Yeah.
Yeah, professional search firm.
makes sense.
I think you're, huh?
Just too many people talking.
No, you can go ahead.
No, you were recognized by the chair.
Oh, no, I just have this question about, chosen on the basis of their proven expertise in hiring upper-level management. I could argue that one of the individuals that was on the recent search as a citizen member was a very qualified businessman that maybe doesn't hire a lot of upper-level management because he owns the company.
Right.
So he's not hiring upper-level management, but he was very successful in business and was a good addition to that search committee. I think you're limiting some talented people that may have insight to the goings-on in town that may not necessarily hire upper-level management individuals, but they're pillars of the community that work in whatever organizations that they worked in, business partnership and heads of business partnerships and all that. They don't necessarily hire those individuals. So I think you're limited because it's subject to appointment by the town council, and the chairman tries to go out. I know I did my best to go out and search for local individuals that, and I'd have to say we had a very successful committee that brought a talented individual to be town manager. So I don't know why we have to get that in there. It's up to the town council to vote to appoint those individuals. So I think you're just limited in it. So I have a hard time with that specific part of that.
If I agree with Councilor Jovan. I have a problem with that. I think there's a lot of good, blue-collar working people who would make fine additions to these search committees who have value and insight. They may not work in, hiring up management, but they may have experience in other communities in elected government. They may have experience in our own community in elected government and necessarily don't work in hiring upper management. So I feel like this is putting a lot of limitations on it when this is something that should be, we should open up the applicant pool to see who has the best interests and the best, who would be the best person to serve in that capacity instead of limiting it to just those who have experience in hiring upper management. It seems like we're limiting to only white collar instead of trying to open it up to all walks of life, which we really should try to do.
Would you be something like vast hiring expertise or something like that? Versus upper-level management? I mean, this is the most important and, how'd you say, inexpensive? No, this is the most important.
No, but I would argue that somebody that's been involved in government in other towns could have a lot of experience working with other town managers, not necessarily, or town officials or whatever, that has a lot of, or in a school system or something that works in that and that has a broad range or had been involved in town boards for a long period of time. They never hired anybody, but they worked with 4 different town managers and they got to see a whole bunch of different things. They have a breadth of experience. I mean, you're just limiting people to say, I'm just going to say because you have expertise in hiring upper level management, you're qualified.
What if we
That would be like saying, because you have a doctorate, you know everything about doing everything. No. The people that work, and I'm not being critical, I'm just, it's just, there's different ways to look at individuals, and we have a hard enough time soliciting individuals to participate in our government, and there may be some very qualified people that have say just, hey, look, I want to get involved, and it's up to the chairman to put together the best pool to present to the council for confirmation on that.
I would tend to agree with you on this one, Councilor Jovan, because I think it's greatly important because private industry and government are 2 totally different animals, and I think it's that I would like to see on any future search committees that you do have, people who are involved in government or have a working knowledge of government, because that position is the important position in town, and people in private industry may not have any knowledge whatsoever of what that person needs to know, their knowledge and their expertise has to be. So I would tend to agree with you on this one.
I would argue that I'd like to see the membership of that group increase to 7 to give a little broader range of individuals. And you open up to 7, and then maybe it's 3 councils and 4 citizen members, and you get a little more pool of individuals to get in there. I wouldn't want to see something like we did on school committee, where I've had search committees for superintendents of like 13 different people or 15. No, that's too large. I think 7 might be a good number. Get a few more citizen members, and just thoughts on that. Because yes, you are right. It's the critical position, and I think more citizens that, you know, that are part of it, but that's up to everybody else. But thank you. Because now would be the time to change it, because we always argue about, is there enough people on that search committee? Because it is critical to get out there and,
I would support your proposal for 7.
So I'm just going back to see how I did it.
It makes sense.
And the breakdown would be 3 and 4.
yeah, why not?
I think that's a good idea.
Still not a majority of the council. You get another council's voice in it.
Well, technically, you don't have to add more counselors, you could just add more citizens.
Or you can have more citizens, yeah, if you want to.
Because I think you get into the murkiness when you go too many from the council.
Yeah, 7, yeah, 2 and 5, that's fine.
2 and 5.
So 7
I don't see anything wrong with that
members,
at
2
all.
of whom shall be
Yeah.
council.
Especially keeping it at 2 counselors.
Yes,
councils?
I feel strongly about that. I have nothing to
Sorry.
say.
No, I agree. Leave it 2 and 5, though. Put it 2 and 5 as far as 2 counselors, 5 residents
Okay,
to come on board.
7.
You know, and I know we had this conversation to Council Steve's point about having somebody from, an employee on it. I don't know whether that's a good idea or not, but I mean, because they answer to it, but I think 5 members, 5 citizens, because I'm sure you'd have, nothing stops any former employee from serving on that search committee.
Yeah, my only concern is you put a paid employee in here.
No, I
And
agree.
Yeah,
No.
I think that's just
Yeah, so.
perception at that point.
Yeah, we're going to cancel that.
I mean, we are only talking one, like, I'm thinking like one employee. You have one seat for a department head, because as I mentioned, they have the insight, direct, actual working knowledge of what the current manager is like, what they want, what they need in a manager, what works and what doesn't work, if they've been there for a while. And I've seen it in several other communities. It does work. I mean, I'm not saying that that the employees shouldn't be stacking the committee so that they're not a majority of employees. They shouldn't be. But I'm just saying, like, one of them should probably be an employee.
Gus, to your question before, there was
Conflict of interest.
employees on the beginning process at the previous council search.
Right.
Town manager search. There were some employees, but when it came down to the final decision, those employees were not considered.
Can I just put, it's not that I'm totally disagreeing with the idea. It would be great. I just see a conflict of interest right there on the spot. Boom, it's over. You know, even if the individual was being hired on, the town employee was in favor of the current town manager, there's going to be a perception by other department heads that things are going their way because they're going to see every excuse why.
It could be seen that way, yes.
If
I agree with that.
the employee doesn't go with that person and says, I wanted this town manager instead, everything goes wrong. There could be a lawsuit at the same time going, the only reason why is because I didn't vote for him or her for town manager.
That could possibly happen, yes. You're right.
That would be my
It could
problems with
happen,
it.
yes.
I would agree with you, Councilor Adams. I think, based on my experience, it's the same idea. Like, teachers can't serve on school boards in the same district they work in, right? Because you would be the boss of your boss. Same idea applies here. If you're putting someone on a search committee, you're putting someone who's going to be choosing their boss, and I would agree. I don't know how ethical that would be to pursue.
I don't know, I just know other towns have done it, so I don't know how well it works for them.
All right, so it's funny, it was really bugging me as to try to figure out where that came from, and I actually went into the minutes, because thank goodness we have them here. It was interesting, when we were discussing that on March 24th, at the end of the section that was read by the chair at the time, it was at the end of the charter under comment number 5, it was stated, "It is the intent of the commission that the 3 non-council members of the 5-member search committee provided in section 4-1-2 be chosen on the basis of their proven expertise in hiring upper-level management." Let's see, further, while the hiring of a professional search firm is discretionary, the commission strongly recommends that from the committee. So it's interesting, that's actually where that came from, was the Charter Commission, which is an elected Charter Commission who changed the charter. It was their comment, and I know people who served on that, so it's kind of funny, but that's where that came from, and that's how we added it in, because we thought, well, that makes sense, just to clarify. Okay,
So what are we changing it to?
so changes, oh, go ahead.
So are we changing it to 7, 2 counselors, and 5
That
citizens?
would be good.
I'd be fine with that.
I'm up with that.
And we'll strike the line if you choose to strike it.
2 councils and 5 citizens?
And I'll strike the legal consultant and turn it back as professional search firm.
Okay.
You didn't make a change on 413, but I have a question regarding, it says that to be considered for appointment, such experience shall be certified to the town council, blah, blah, blah. How so? Because we can't necessarily dictate how another town does business. So how is this to be certified by the previous employer?
It was part of, we didn't do anything with that.
And that's in 413?
413, yeah.
All we did was strike
Oh,
out.
we just struck out related administrative
Serve
activity.
with the pleasure to be
Was that again?
considered for
No, keep
appointments
going,
be
and shall serve with the
certified.
pleasure that to be considered for appointment, such experience shall be certified to the town council by an appropriate official of the entity where such experience would. I think all that's saying is that this person worked here from this date to this date, kind of thing. which
that capacity.
can be certified by the HR department or, you see what I'm, it requires a certain number of years of experience. That's all that's saying, that certification that they actually worked in that position for that many years.
Okay.
You can get that from any staff member of a community.
Okay.
We just took out the related administrative activity. We felt that service municipal administration was very important.
Yeah.
Because not all administrative activity is the same, is within the realm.
Municipal administration.
Yeah.
It ties into what you were just saying a few minutes ago, Pam, because you can do you can have 40 years of corporate administration and know nothing about legal detailings that require, the municipal law and that kind of stuff, so,
Okay.
absolutely.
So moving on, if we go down under 421, we just, policies versus chosen, we said enacted, because the council doesn't choose policies, they vote on them, they enact them, they don't choose them. 422.
Talked
This,
about this a lot.
yeah, there was a lot on this discussion, and it's come up, I think, within, I know, previous council people that I've dealt with and stuff too. Originally, it's the town manager shall hold no elective or other appointed office, shall devote full time to the duties of the office, and shall engage in no other business or occupation without advance authorization of the council. So we'll leave it as the town manager shall devote full time to the duties of the office and shall engage in no other business or occupation. The town manager shall hold no elective or appointed office without advance authorization of the town council. And we left it at that because the elected, that could be in his own hometown, her own hometown, could serve on a board potentially or that type of thing. It's not necessarily here either. It's other places too, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that how we discussed that too?
Or even serving on a board, like the Maya board or MMA board or something like that.
Right, that too was the other, there was a combination to that.
Right.
So,
You said that's included in that, or that's not included?
Right, so they wouldn't be prohibited from doing that, of course. In fact, I would think that the council would want their manager to have exposure like that with their professional organizations. But they should, out of courtesy, of course, give notification to the town council that they're serving in that capacity.
Well, in this case, it specifically says the council authorizes them to do it. They're not
Right.
telling the council to do it.
Right.
The council tells him or her
Give
that
permission.
she's doing
Yep,
it.
yep.
the council should know how the town manager is spending his
We should.
on-hour
I totally
time.
agree. We saw what happened.
We've seen what
I
happened.
totally- I
And in the
totally
past,
agree
say
with
a Chris Clark, or he served on Maya or in
MMA,
MMA stuff.
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very standard in the industry.
It should be. I agree.
Let's see, 423, the manager shall. This is a little contention sometimes. Went back and forth on that. Should reread it, make sure I'm good. Attend all council meetings except when excused, and shall have the right to speak but not to vote. Attend all subcommittee meetings or assign a designee to attend except when excused, and shall have the right to speak but not to vote.
So is the man, go ahead.
I imagine the chair of the subcommittee, or the chair of the council, or the
Yeah,
chair of
that
the,
makes sense.
So it would be, so for any one of our subcommittees, that can mean that they contact us and we say, yeah, go ahead and take the night off, we got this.
Yeah.
Correct.
or send me somebody, or you already have somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the town manager may say, it's a DPW subcommittee, and the director can speak to a topic better than the town manager could, and he contacts the chair of the subcommittee and says, listen, I'm going to send Heather tonight, and, there's really no need for me to be there, she can handle everything. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
So if you have a couple of subcommittees at the same night, you have to be half here, half.
That if they,
Who decide which one is gonna go, which one not?
if one doesn't excuse him, he's going to be there.
And if
Or
none-
she's gonna-
if
whoever
none
the
of them
town
excuse them, what do you do?
And it's not saying the town manager doesn't have to come, he can come if he wants, but if he has another meeting or something, and he says, hey, you're all set, everybody, the chief, I mean, we've had one, hey, I got a transfer of, right, we're declaring surplus a pickup truck, right? The town manager have to be there for that? No? No? Right. So.
Now,
No, but I mean, it's gonna be hard, you know, you never know how people sometimes act. And what will protect the town manager from being by both board members saying, I want him on that meeting, and at both meeting at the same time, in the same day, what do you do?
oh, at the same time and the same day? No, that doesn't.
I mean, you can, that's
Come on,
what
you
I'm
people
saying.
aren't doing
It's
that,
like
right?
A lot of times they have two different, like, meeting in the same time, in the same day. Which one you should attend? I don't know if you understand my question.
This only applies to town council. This does not apply.
No, he's saying any other board, not only town council meeting, any other.
Subcommittee.
So it's been in practice that no subcommittee chairs.
You don't overlap
Scheduled at
subcommittees.
the same time, they usually schedule right after another, if that's the case.
Yeah.
And in that case, the manager can be
So say you have a DPW at 7 and a P&D at 6 or something. Well, if he doesn't have to be at P&D, I guess he can come in later and go, or do some other work or something, or vice versa. He can leave early because he doesn't have to stay for the second meeting. Is that,
I understand council meeting, but regarding subcommittee meeting, like, you put them in a position they can hold it against them, and,
So that's occurring, that there are times when there are, you know, a PPP meeting and a general government is occurring at the same time?
No.
No, but there are council subcommittees, like capital planning has happened at the same time as subcommittees, and we've had conflicts where I can't be at two places at the same time, or the fire station's building subcommittee, where I'm needed to be at both at the same time.
but you guys got to schedule better. Yes.
Well, there's sometimes, no offense, there's not enough nights in the week to put all these meetings on, and there are other conflicts. And actually, with my new staff, we would like to propose with the council chair and the assistants of the council, maybe just like we plan out council meetings for the year in advance, we start putting together a regular schedule of council subcommittee meetings on certain nights of the week so that we could predetermine to avoid some of the scheduling conflicts. I realize that some things come up. I don't want to speak out of line, but it does get rather hectic, and that creates for a lot of the scheduling and agenda issues that have to get changed at the last minute in my office. So my new executive assistant is pretty sharp, and she was looking at this and saying, you know, if we could straighten out some of this, we could avoid a lot of these conflicts well in advance, and it would make for a much more effective and efficient meeting schedule. So it's something I think we should look at while we're on the topic. So.
That makes sense.
Well, I might say, though, if there's a conflict happening, then they have to allow for a designee to be at one or the other. I mean, you can't split a person in half, and it is what it is.
That's right.
But I've never been an over big fan of hog tying every single, second Tuesday is something, because life goes on for a lot of people, but that's just my,
I don't, I know it's a little off the topic a little bit, but it kind of is on the same topic. If we can work something out with the subcommittees, I think that's going to help quite a bit. I do believe it's the chair's responsibility to maybe get with the executive assistant and say, okay, when is this time period? Who's got the meetings on the 12th of March? Does anybody schedule at this point in time? And then work with the executive assistant through the chairs and figure it out so they don't run over each other. Or if they overlap, sometimes it overlaps. Think it's going to take 15 minutes, it takes 45 minutes. But I think it's just constant communication between the town manager's office and the chairs of the subcommittees. I think that's probably the most important thing. I don't even know if you could put that in writing specifically.
Councilor Adams, I would beckon to say that what the manager needs to get a handle on his department heads, because what you find, at least what seems to be on the committee I serve on and others, is why didn't, we've had 2 weeks, 3 weeks, suddenly you got to have this on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday to get it on the next council meeting. It wasn't always like that. So you need to get those, people need to have their own order of operations in order so that you can plan things farther enough ahead too, to make that efficient. Because if they're still not efficient, they'll be calling emergency meetings or meeting every week.
Right. I don't think it's the subcommittees all the time doing this. I don't believe that at all. I do believe there's other times where we have some meetings from curbside to whatever it may be, fire to capital, that may just overrun each other a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Not so much the subcommittees. Department heads do a pretty good job, I believe, in scheduling some of the meetings. I know there's last minutes,
Seen it
but,
better.
and I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I
So,
think our-
how do you feel about the
Our
yeah,
purpose for this is giving importance to the fact that subcommittee meetings are also important. You know, when I served on council, my thing was always, you know, the work should be done in subcommittee, not up here. When you get up here, you should have all your information, you should have done your due diligence, take your votes. You know, the performance isn't required. So, that's just my take. But, and also giving, even though acknowledging the importance of the subcommittee meetings also, but giving the manager an out, if you will, you know, to assign a designee or get excused, and just hoping that you guys figure out your scheduling issues. But, you know, I've heard the town manager is very good, but not good enough to split himself in 2 or 3 or 4, so.
and we just felt, it, like you said, attend all council meetings was
Right.
very vague. Some people referred to everything as a council meeting, so if that works. Let's see, following down to B, fully informed. Let's see, last line, town records generate such reports as may be requested by a majority of the town council. You know, having to do with the written reports, no less frequently than quarterly throughout the year, shall provide the councilors with such town records as shall generate such reports as may be requested by the chairperson or the council, of the council. We felt that it should not just be the chairperson at will asking for reports. It could be way frequent or just not at all. It really should be coming from the council. You are all elected to do the job of the community. You should all be voting on whether or not you need a report. You need the manager to go through that and do it. So it just, versus just a chairperson. So that was the reason for throwing that there.
So I guess I kind of have a question on that one, talking about it a little bit. So what if an emergency situation were to occur and, you know, we needed a report generated? We would have to call a council meeting instead of allowing the chairman to be like, hey, no, get this report ready for council real quick?
Well, as you see, this is general problems, administrative actions, you know, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be, if it's something that needs to happen, I doubt very much that even the town manager is going to deny you information.
Well, but I understand that, but the way this is written, it says it has to be done by a majority of council now. The chairman can't just request it in case of an emergency situation. Like, that's why I'm wondering.
Specifically, though, you know, from the top, keep the fully informed regarding the town departmental operations, fiscal affairs, general problems, administrative actions, shall keep the council fully advised as to the financial condition of the town by filing written reports with the council not less frequently than quarterly throughout the year, shall provide the councilors with such records and shall generate such reports as may be requested by the council. Originally, it was by the chairman of the council. Here is a majority of the council. So they're not, it's not like a, you know.
Yeah, I can't, in my 4 years, I think I only asked the town manager to generate one report, and that was the former town manager, and it was because of a whole host of issues that the council wasn't being briefed on, and it was other reasons for that. That we I requested a whole bunch of financial reports because of COVID, and I said, you know, we weren't getting information. It was like, you need to generate this report to council because he wasn't providing that information. But outside of that, I don't think there's any other reports that we would ever need on an emergency basis. You know?
So, I mean,
I think that's a give and take too, because I think
Correct.
if you said to, hey, Chairman Daniels, I think we need a report on this, and he has a conversation with the town manager, it's that important. He says, hey, some councils are looking for this, could you get this report or something? I think it's all in the day-to-day responsibilities. You have to have some give and take.
But this is kind of to, I don't want to use.
Any chairman that
I
goes
don't want to
rogue
say
and says, hey, I
protect.
want to
Right,
reports
exactly.
that-
He doesn't need to be jumping through hoops because
Right.
you have a rogue, you know, chairman who.
Correct.
Or has
wants to-
another friend maybe. Who
wants to bust, you know, hinder him, impede him.
Impede him.
In his daily operations, and this is to kind of, protect the position from something like that.
Okay, on the next page with, again, more stuff for the town manager, serve as general ombudsman for the town. And we just felt it was important to clarify. That's, do you want to, is yours, right? In all matters other than this? In all matters other than those involving members of the town council. Because we were saying that that was an issue as to, if it says the general ombudsman, but we wanted to specify for matters not involving the town council, because how can he be the ombudsman for the town council when it could be in conflict with, you are his boss, so if there was an issue with that, it should be an outside person, not the town manager. So that was just, we threw that in. You know, right? You remember?
Now
that?
I remember,
Yeah,
sorry.
It's okay, let's go back to the minutes. Sorry, threw into there. Whatever, again, whether you agree or not, it's up to you guys. Except as otherwise, for H, except for otherwise set forth in the general laws or by this charter, the town manager shall serve as the chief procurement officer for the town, excluding the school department. Originally, it said shall serve as central purchasing agent for all town departments.
And you don't even have that. You don't do that, right? You don't have a central purchasing department here. You don't, it's not even relative.
You might have back in '74 maybe or something.
Right, but that's not how you do business, so, but he is, that position is the chief procurement officer.
So why would you eliminate the school department?
Because that's, he is not, he
legally
does
not.
not serve as the chief procurement officer for the school department.
Okay? But the
And, yeah,
town owns all school buildings and equipment, right?
That has
So-
nothing just, but that has to do with the chief procurement of,
The procurement of items
Yeah,
is the
procurement
responsibility of the
is all-
superintendent for the school district, not all. And it would be, procurement in a normal circumstance would fall under the school committee and their purview. So it would make sense that the procurement officer would be the superintendent for the system, not the town manager, because that's the person that runs the day-to-day operations of the school system, correct?
and along with this is a legal term, and it's a legal definition within Chapter 30B, and that's why we listed it here such as this, because there are legal ramifications now to this, to this.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I don't disagree with this language at all, because I think we saw problems in the past where, when I served on the school committee, everything had to go through Chris Clark to have all purchase orders signed, and he was so busy that things on the school side
remember
had to
that.
wait for the town side to approve it. Town manager's very busy. I mean, there's that check and balance, but I think that also went back to the Chapter 475 when the school system had the deficit. So I think we're well beyond that now. We're almost, 20 years past that, I hope. So I agree with this language.
okay, going down, 424, subject to confirmation by the town council, the manager shall have the power to appoint on the basis of merit and fitness alone, a fire chief, a police chief, a director of public works. Let's see, we put in a town treasurer slash collector, because that's what we,
Right, we combine them.
Right,
Because that's
'cause that's what-
actually what we have.
right. A veterans agent, a director of inspection services, and all inspectors except as otherwise provided by general law, upon recommendation of the chief, a police department, upon recommendation of the chief, a fire department, upon recommendation of the director, a deputy director of public works, because it used to say a department of public works, and that came up recently as to you're approving every part-time summer employee, everybody, because it's the Department of Public Works, it's all of it. So in keeping consistent with the other departments, yeah, what am I thinking? Yes, exactly. Generally, we do have a deputy director, and that would make sense that they would do the deputy director, but every other, can't even think, employee, plow, yeah, truck driver, mower, of those people, that's for them to have to be brought through the town council just didn't seem the day-to-day operation.
General staff.
General
is
staff. right.
Usually just, support staff is normally just appointed by the town manager and, or hired by the department,
Hired, yeah.
however you guys do it, but.
If that's the case, then couldn't you say the same thing about the police and fire departments? 'Cause
With
it's
who?
specific-
I'm
'cause
sorry?
it's specific- if that's the case, then couldn't you say the same thing about the police and fire departments? But it says specifically here that the manager still directly appoints the police and fire department. How is that any different from the
police and
DPW?
fire, Yeah.
Right.
We talked about that a lot.
And it had to do with because they were more public
Yeah.
officers of the, they engage in the public in many, many, many more ways than your average employee, your average clerk, or anybody else. And so, they carry firearms, and they're responsible for life and limb, and they're, safety people. And it's been public. If you want to change it, that's your purview.
No, I'm
It was kind of like,
Curious what your thoughts are.
it was the norm here in Southbridge, that it was, not everybody does that, but a lot of police department, a lot of towns still
Oh, I know they do.
still do that.
I mean, you
So-
have the swearing-in ceremony here,
Yeah,
they get
so
pinned.
it's just
you know,
different.
They shake everybody's hand, kind of pomp and circumstance kind of, thing. I don't know.
They're more
It's
public.
kind of a quick introduction for the town to all of these people that are
Right, exactly.
police and fire people.
Right,
Yeah.
they can
And
see
there's
a
a lot of-
face. Yeah.
There's a lot at stake with some of those employees. We've sent them to academies, we've put a lot of it, we've invested in a lot of them, so they're more public-based than your average, plow driver and, and
Even though they are extremely important.
they are important, they keep our roads, they kept us safe.
the,
Winter's coming.
The clerks in this building, the staff at the highway
Yes.
department, everyone is very important.
I can never remember voting on a DPW employee.
No, I don't.
But
I
that
don't
question
recall
came
seeing
up
that
to
either,
us
but-
during these
Right.
discussions,
Oh,
so.
Yeah, I think I brought that up several years ago to the former town manager, saying that by the reading of this, you're supposed to, but I can't remember in the history of Southbridge them voting
me
on
either.
DPW. So
Yeah.
I think it was just one of those that they had it in there, and they didn't look at the technical aspect of that.
Right.
So we thought we'd clear it out and just make it,
Oh, and just as a point of, just a correction here, you wrote to describe a head librarian as library director. Hasn't been head librarian for decades.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that should say
did I miss some?
library director instead of head
Yeah.
librarian, that's
Oh.
not.
All right, so,
Can I
yeah.
subject one thing on 4-3-1? Why the reason we have three-member board of registrars, three-member of board of appeal, and a liquor board? Why wouldn't do 5 on each board?
We can make him 5.
Can we change it to 5? 3 members, I think it's very weak in controlling. I believe 5 members, and they can have 2 alternate on each board. I think we should do that.
I would actually be inclined to agree with that. I think 3-member boards are too small.
Because every other board, we have 5 member on a board of health, 7 member on a planning board. Why those 3? And it's an important board. I think we should have 5 on each, if you guys agree.
I agree with it in principle. I also want to think of the practicality of it. How many people are banging down the doors to be appointed to the liquor board?
It is hard because there's a lot of.
Because it's during the day when most people are working. They usually
have
have their
to always
meetings
be
at
It doesn't
noon.
have to be, though.
It doesn't have to be, that's just what they
Yeah.
chose.
They can change their time.
And quite honestly, there's been the same 3 members for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I know you can't get an alternate, but you may, because somebody may say, look, I'm not going to go on a board just to sit there as an alternate if these 3 members have been there for the last,
20 years.
how many years? Long time. I mean, if you open up to a 5-member, there may be a couple people out there that say, oh, okay, I can actually have some, personally,
Because
would
you
I
have
want to
to
go
learn
to
it.
a
You have
liquor
to train.
licensing board and be an alternate if I know it's a 3-member board and I'm never going to participate in anything and my voice doesn't have any,
Chance.
right? You're just an alternate, so.
I'm in agreement. We do 5 on that, and I would say that, well, at least in my view, I think we stay with, we move up to 5. And the fact, I think I know one explanation behind the 1 PM meeting, according to the chair at one of the meetings, was the fact that they would do it when businesses were open, stuff like that. But that being said, it has been brought up, why is it at 1 PM when everybody else is at 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, and stuff like that? So
Yeah.
maybe there just needs to make a change over there, put 5 and get them to the evening time.
Is there a specific reason why you have to have an alternate on these boards?
Well, in case you don't have that quorum, but then
Well,
again,
no, but if you go to a 5-member.
You don't
and
need
say,
it.
hey, a 5-member board and no alternates.
Or you do
It's
one
a
alternate.
5-member board.
it wouldn't hurt to still always have somebody just in case.
What, and one alternate
One
on each?
alternate,
Yeah, maybe with
Because
5
look
you'd
what
have
happens.
sometimes 4.
And one alternate?
yeah.
In those types of boards too, they do have trainings, there's a whole lot, again, finding out at MMA, talking to the ABCC people out there
Right.
before, and learning what's involved. You really have to have something, you have to have some knowledge back there, so. Also, with the extra liquor licenses that you're all trying to get and the, future purposes, it wouldn't hurt to have more people, more bodies.
It would be.
I was just about to say that.
I think that agrees with a lot, I think that applies to a lot of these other boards too. A lot of these other boards have to go through extensive training periods for one reason or another. And some of them have had lots of people there for many years now. The planning board comes to mind, conservation. Although conservation right now only has 3 members. There is nobody else. That's it.
Yeah, but
These they can be all the time on a board. They can't like serve 5 year, 10 years, step down and come back up. I mean, it's a lot of, if you really look at it, it's a lot of political in it,
So,
to be
Mr.
honest with you.
Counselor Dow, I'm going to tell you, because this was a big deal to me way back when, people might remember, but just because they're appointed and they're still there doesn't mean they should be reappointed. They're appointed for a term, usually 3 years or so, depending. They're town manager appointments. And a lot of times, it would be like, oh, name comes up, do you still want to serve? Yep, okay, and it just kind of would go. Now, the town didn't go solicit too much for extra people to come in, and a lot of people just said, well, they've been there. But honestly, I agree with you that it's not that they have to be kicked off, but if there should be, interest should be put out there to let people know that these positions are open and that you have every right to come in and maybe get a change too.
I think by
so.
doing 5, that will give the opportunity for the town manager, if he want to re-elect him, to say, okay, I have more members now, I can take my time and see who else interested in that board. 3 members, I think it's kind of like, oh, maybe they need a training, or maybe I don't have enough time to look for somebody. I think 5 members, it's important, and if one alternate,
They've only had one alternate all along anyway.
I mean, I think it's a good idea to do all these boards.
It's like a little friendly thing, you want 5 on there?
5, okay?
The only problem is, Counselor Dow, you do own a bar, so you may be able to, I don't have a problem with you discussing it, but you may want to recuse yourself from voting on such a thing.
When that come to vote, I would accuse. Now it's just suggest, and I don't think that have nothing to do with me if I own or I don't own. But when the vote come to that liquor specific, I would accuse myself. That's
Okay.
not a problem.
But I think he's setting it's not specific to his bar, because he's just saying, hey, I think we should open up membership for a committee to have 5 individuals.
I think we
that's,
should.
that's,
I agree with that.
That's, he's not asking for, well, but.
And I know,
I- against
you're being after me personally for certain things, so let's put that on the side and do what the town really needs, and let's put the private thing on the side. Let's do what the town needs, what the people need, and what's important, please. Thank you.
I'm not after you personally about anything,
Thank you.
So 5 members.
So I would recommend 5.
And just a technicality, it would
With the
be
one.
abstaining, because the recusal would mean you wouldn't be discussing at all.
At all.
Right.
So
But-
it would be an abstention, just a clarification.
But with all due respect, this is, when we vote something like this, we're voting on an entire document. So
Yeah.
to say that he has to recuse himself on an entire document that we're gonna put to the voters of the town of Southbridge would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
If
Oh, yeah,
you don't want
I
him to
see
talk
your-
about
I
the
see your
specific
point.
liquor licensing issue, that's one thing. But the overall document itself, would be ludicrous for him to recuse himself for putting this measure before the voters of Southbridge. Thank you.
5 and 1 is good.
And I didn't specific mention the liquor board, 3 board. It's the member board of registers and board of appeal and the licensed liquor. So it's not only I'm talking one
So
the
the-
way you think.
Yeah, 5.
Just for point of clarification, the Board of Registrars and the makeup of such is actually determined by Mass General Laws, Chapter 51, Section 15, and it's 3 members and then the town clerk. So that has to be 3 members.
They have to be,
And they were
they have a lot
elected,
of
aren't they?
qualifications to meet, don't they?
No, they have to be members of certain parties, and there's
They're elected.
they're appointed when they're first appointed, and then it's a rolling thing, but it's all laid out in 5115.
Okay, so
So that one can't be.
That can't be changed.
Is that
Can't be
true? Is
changed.
that
They're
true for
elected,
the liquor
too.
board or the zoning board of
The
appeals?
Board of
Board
Registrars,
of
they
Appeals
have
is
one,
Pam,
They're
is that, are
appointed.
there
Does that mean
similar
they're
laws for
appointed?
the other
Yes.
three-person
The Board of
boards?
Appeals is what she's asking.
I'm sorry.
Pam, are there similar laws for the other three-person boards? The liquor board, the zoning board of appeals?
No,
not.
not to my knowledge. I was only aware of this one, that's why I looked it up.
Okay.
The others, no, to my knowledge, there is no restriction on those.
Okay, good.
Unless the town manager knows something I don't know, no.
No, the only one I knew off the top of my head was the registrars.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would almost wonder, we're having such a hard time filling the planning board as 7. Should that be 5? Just saying, throwing it out there.
Maybe it should.
With 2 alternates.
With two alternates.
Maybe it should.
Because
Right-
filling
right
7,
now,
then you don't have a
it's
quorum,
full,
you
but-
don't have or you don't have what you need.
I mean, it's right now, I think it's full, isn't it?
so change
The planning board, I think, is now full, isn't it?
It might be, but they were having trouble for a while.
planning
so
board is full.
It's now
It is.
full, okay.
Does that include full plus 2 alternates? I think the 2 alternates
The
became
2
full
alternates are
members.
vacant, but
That's what I thought.
the
Okay.
planning board members are full.
Right.
Make them all 5. Sure.
So you have 7 members?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
So
that's good.
you want to make it 5?
Conservation is the one that really needs help.
there's
It's got 3 members, it needs 4
You
more.
want to make it 5?
What 2 members get off then?
Huh?
What 2 members would be alternates then?
There
In
aren't
that
too
case, if we have a full board at 7 right
Well,
now.
you wouldn't be able to, at this point, I don't think, take the members that have been appointed for a certain amount of time, make them alternates. You'd have to wait till the next reappointment comes up.
So it would be the next 2 people up
Would you just
would
take
have
off
to be
the rest?
And
appointed
this
as
has to go
alternates.
through
They
a whole
couldn't be appointed.
process, too.
Right, this has to go through a whole process,
has
and
to
in
go
the
through a
transition,
process.
you would then determine at that point, maybe the last 2 that were appointed become the alternates, or something like that. Your transition language would include something such as that.
Or
I-
if you
I-
have one that's not being reappointed, that person would become, that leaves you don't fill that spot.
Right.
I sat on the Charter Commission in my hometown, and we did something like that. We converted something, let's say, to elected from appointed. And so at the end of the current individual's term is when we implemented the new procedures that were elected or voted on by the legislative body and the citizenry.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
so they could stay on till they fell off.
Their transitional provisions there.
Well, the only thing I want to say is that they have been working on this for over a year, and now we're going to start adding things to it. I think we should let them do what they did, go with what they recommended, and then later on, if you want to add something to this charter, then that's fine, but to add it now, after they've done all this work, why would we have them do all this work if we're going to now add something to it?
So while we're here, then.
That's all I
Yeah. So I would only say, Councilor Marquette's, the reason we're here is obviously to review, because we're not the end-all, be-all, we just had some suggestions. Nobody came to us on these. I mean, I had heard there were vacancies or things, I didn't think about increasing, which that would make sense for some of the concerns I had, but I never thought to say, let's increase it. So we didn't touch that because, well, I mean, we looked at it, we said, okay, and we just kind of, that wasn't something that, had a whole lot of, we didn't consider that. Nobody came and said, how about we do this, how about we do that? We wish
All right.
somebody would have.
Okay, that's fine.
But, so now this is the opportunity, if you have that desire to, before it goes anywhere down the road, if.
And you got to wait another 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, well, no, it just takes an act of the legislature to make it work, yeah. So it's up to you if you want to do, but it's easy now it's just paper, it's paper and suggestion, that's all it is now.
And we can avoid going through the legislative process again in a year or two, doing it the way you suggested, if we do it all now.
We don't want to do that, because you're going to
Exactly.
need to do a bylaw review at
That's
some
what I'm saying,
point
we
to
want
make
to
it
do all this
feasible.
stuff now and get the changes in process now, what we want or what we don't want, so that we can do the bylaw review immediately thereafter, and we don't have to go back to the legislature again to change our
Yeah, they
charter.
don't like that too much. yeah.
So did we determine?
So what's your thoughts?
So, yeah, are we,
5 planning board
I would
and 5 liquor licensing board.
I would throw
What about
5 on
Concom?
the zoning
Concom?
board.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
what?
Concom's at 7 too, and you can never get them, right?
Maybe,
Does
it
only
probably
have
should. I
5?
mean, it's been such a short board for so long now. Yeah, maybe we should do 5 Concom.
What,
5 and 2.
Make all of these 5 on,
other than the Board of
other than the
Registrars?
Board of Registrars.
Boards, 5-member boards, I think would make the most sense.
Maybe each of them have one
Obviously.
alternate that,
With at least 1 or 2 alternates, right?
yeah, 1 or 2 alternates, depending on, some of them
So-
really need them, some don't.
Okay, so it would read like this: a 5-member Board of Health, a 5-member Planning Board with 2 alternate members, a 3-member Board of Registrars, a 5-member Board of Appeals with 2 alternate members, a 5-member Conservation Commission, and a 5 with 2 alternate members, and a 5-member Liquor Licensing Board with 1 alternate member.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I like it.
That sounds good.
Because Counselor Steves, you mentioned there's only 3 members of the Concom right now?
As of right now,
So they
yeah.
can't even,
They can't even fill
they
those.
can't even, how are they doing anything?
They don't have a quorum.
They don't have a quorum?
I think the state law doesn't say you have to have all, you know, except, I remember looking it up, and there's a weird
Probably don't rule of
phrasing in the law that says that allows them to do it.
Oh, okay.
Necessity.
But we need to get more people on that board, because there's only 3.
Yeah, okay.
And one of them has been there for like 45 years.
If it was 5, though, then they'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
All right, switch the page.
Before we continue, I'm just noticing, we have a lot of sections we still have to go through, and we're only on section 4. It would be my suggestion to the council that maybe, once we get to maybe chapter 6, we move to have the rest of this discussion on another night instead of working through the wee hours as it gets later.
Ms. Jackie, we've got a lot of blank paper too, so you might get further than you think. If you want to set a deadline, set it till 10.
I think we're going to have a lot of conversation on the budgetary issues
Right.
and the transfer
Yeah, I'd love
policies
to
and
get
all
to
that. I
that.
think that's
My favorite,
the favorite, so.
my favorite discussion.
All right, so I'll go quicker. We'll just go with the reds.
Yeah.
If there's no questions, we'll
Yeah.
just keep going too, so. All right, 432, that's where we changed the trustees, soldiers, sailors, marines,
Yeah.
and air memorials because World War I was irrelevant. Oh gosh, did I say
Yeah,
that?
that's not right.
That, I didn't mean that.
And there it goes.
I meant the committee no longer, yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Everybody understands that one. The power to rescind, that's kind of an important deal here. Went through that, did some research on that, because for some reason 442 always said power shall not apply to quasi-judicial boards as determined by it's supposed to be town attorney. Never quite made sense, that statement. So we did some research with the Attorney General's office and such to understand, and also other communities and even other states and even the main federal government, which said it's quasi-judicial boards are removed the same way they're appointed or put into place. But the AG's office said, well, what does your charter say? And I said, well, that's what our charter says here. And she said, it's up to you to put in your charter how you want to remove the same people that you appointed, because the council approved the appointment, like, you know, say the town manager appointed him and you confirmed, then why wouldn't you have a way to remove rogue, bias, whatever, people who aren't on a quasi-judicial board, you're supposed to act judicial. Why wouldn't you, if you had somebody that people were having issues with on a regular basis, and you know, why wouldn't the appointing authority have the right to consult them, due process, public hearing if they choose, that type of thing, because that's the due process in this case, like any other one. But why would you have to go to the town attorney then? It didn't, according to the AG, that didn't make any sense. You know, the AG's office that I spoke with 3 different people, because anyway, each time I called. But either way, they all said the same thing. What does your charter say? And I said, that's what we're trying to determine. So we felt the easiest thing was to leave it in the same. Take that out and just stick with 441, that the manager has the power to rescind, subject to confirmation for cause, and, you know, yada, yada, as you see there, whether they're quasi or there's something else.
That makes sense,
So.
yeah.
All right, raise questions. Okay. Section 6, removal of the manager. We did some changing, well, some additions, clearly. Removal, not final removal, which made no real sense. Removal of the manager prior to the expiration of their term of appointment shall be effected by a 2/3 vote of the entire council, i.e. minimum of 6, at an open town council meeting prior to the expiration of their term of appointment. Such vote shall immediately rescind said appointment. Again, there was so much question as to you're appointed, that's a different vote than firing them, and versus their contract running out, versus this tied it all together and left no question as to how what should happen the vote is going to take both things away. You don't have to have some other vote, and they're not appointed in perpetuity until some council voted to unappoint them, even though they would no longer work there.
Could I just ask you to add and just put removal of the town manager?
Oh,
To
sorry.
make it consistent with
Yeah, I- you
other
know,
sections?
Oh, right.
And say, and then, so the section 6 would be removal of the town manager?
Got it.
And then removal of the town manager, just to be consistent.
Yeah, we appreciate it, because that was one thing we harped on Yvonne about, is making sure she was putting in two, and we missed that.
Well, it's not in the original, so it just makes sense.
Right, but.
And also, just why do you duplicate prior to the expiration of their term of appointment? You've got it in there twice.
What?
You've got the same phrase prior to the expiration of their term of appointment in the same sentence twice. You only need one of them.
Should be effective by 2/3 an open town council.
Right.
Yeah,
I would
sorry.
eliminate the second one.
You do, it is.
Also,
Yeah, I would remove the top
sec-
one and leave the second.
whichever way, yeah, either way.
See, they got left in.
And
Sorry.
also, just to point out a spelling thing, shall be affected, that meaning should be EFF, not AFF. Because you're making it
affected.
effective.
Not affected.
by
You're right.
doing
Yeah,
it,
you're absolutely right.
As opposed to shall be affected by.
That was wrong in the previous one.
Yeah, was it?
No, it's affected.
It should
It's
be
not
EFF.
effective.
You're making it effective.
Oh, but
No,
it's
no, no. Shall
affected,
be
it's not
affected
effective.
means it'll only happen if you do
Yeah,
two-thirds vote.
Same thing, EFF.
So it should be an A. That is correct.
It affects it by
It
a
affects
two-thirds
it.
vote.
You're making it happen.
It does affect it, but you're making it effective.
No, shall be affected
It's
by a
effective.
two-thirds vote,
Okay,
right? It's not effective, it's
I think we
effective.
understand what it means.
It makes
I
it
swear we
happen.
had this discussion in our minutes, so.
Okay.
Is there an English teacher near here?
Huh?
Is there an English teacher near here?
Well, while we're looking it up, if there's, is that, otherwise you're
It is
okay with it?
effective.
It is
A
effective.
effective.
Effective is
Because you're
right.
making it happen.
Right,
Okay.
Correct, Counselor?
and I'm almost 99% we talked about
I stick to shall and may, that's right.
that. That's hard enough.
All right, let's go.
Okay, moving on, acting town manager. During the temporary absence, and we took out this disability, any permanent vacancy, we put permanent because that's what's important. The original term of service as acting manager may not exceed 12 months, and then we put however subsequent terms of service may be extended by vote of town council, because that could possibly happen. So those are the, oops.
So, Counselor Steves is correct. Affected means impacted, created an effect on, changed in a certain way. Effected means executed, brought about by, produced something. So your two-thirds vote effects, yes. So,
It doesn't show up.
Sound
wrong in-
correct.
Were we taking vote, that's on?
I don't
It
agree,
doesn't
but
show up in the, what do you call it, spell check?
I would not to
Yes.
hire him as a tutor.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, moving on.
Let's see, we put in town. You notice in red, we added town to the manager. We did catch a bunch of them.
Hey, I would just ask you, should, however, subsequent terms of service may be extended by majority vote of the town council?
Oh, that's fine.
okay.
Okay, on chapter 5, and page 10, all you have is down bottom.
Should there be a limit on
I
that
think,
before we continue that? Should there be a limit on how many times an acting town manager can be extended? Because we don't want it to be, and every year this person gets revoted as acting town manager, they're never actually hired. They're just sort of town manager in perpetuity.
Well,
just
at some
because-
point, you're changing counselors, perhaps.
You would
if you're
hope,
gonna get
but,
rid-
but I'm seriously, seriously, should there be a limit on that?
But at the same time, Councilor Steves, we have a manager shortage right now. What if you can't find somebody qualified and then you have an acting manager who's reached the limit because it says in here you can only do it 2 times or 3 times, and then you're like, crap, I can't find a manager. We have to appoint a new one. So
that is
I
true.
would see that's kind of a double-edged sword.
And it does say any permanent vacancy in the office of the town manager shall be filled as soon as possible by the town council. So
Not exceed 12 months.
that's your marching orders.
well,
Acting town manager.
okay. All right, so the next page, I see nothing until the bottom. Powers of the director, no person shall be hired as an employee department without the recommendation, not consent, because it's not 100% up to the director. It's recommendation of the director. All right, page 11, 623. Again, same idea, director attending meetings as requested by the town manager and DPW subcommittee meetings unless excused. Let's see.
There's a few unnecessary comments in that whole paragraph there.
Yeah.
Six-
He's looking at
What'd I do?
the commas are in the wrong place, I think.
In 623, yeah.
The director shall attend, town council.
As requested by the town manager, DPW.
So
We'll just take one out.
take the one after requested
Requested, yeah.
out.
And after measures and then after action, they're not necessary in there.
Yep.
So,
After Mr.
okay. Here, we want to get it. All right. Next line. We took out the annually or more often required, because it's just not, you just don't do it. That's not being done. Right? The reports.
Well, we're working.
So, okay. 625, each petition submitted pursuant to town bylaws. We added that instead of, and let's see. Each petition submitted pursuant to town bylaws and referred to the Department of Public Works shall be returned to the council with a recommendation. Because it shouldn't go to the council first. It should go to DPW and then it should go to council, because you've got to know that the petitions go to the DPW.
Well, the bylaws dictate,
Yeah.
so that's why it says
Right.
pursuant to town bylaws. So the bylaws dictate how the petitions are submitted. Like your petition for maintenance to a road, it's dictated within the bylaw where it's submitted and how that goes. So-
So it'll go them and then come here. It doesn't seem to make sense to come here, go there, and then, and the
Right.
bylaw already says it
Right.
has to go to them first. I think that was, yeah. All right, let's see, 626. March 1st was this hard, fast deadline on that. It seemed, so we just changed on or before the first day of March and left it at that, because that first was kind of a hard deadline that didn't seem quite right. Director shall cause to be performed and inspect all of the work of construction, reconstruction. We felt that and inspect was
That's
a nice
extremely important.
in light of things.
It's that person's responsibility to inspect the jobs that are being done as they're being done, so they know what's happening out there on our roads.
So are you saying in this case that the director shall actually inspect all of these? Because the way
Shall
that,
cause to be
is read,
performed.
it can be, they can designate, they can designate somebody to perform and inspect.
They shall cause to be performed and inspected, so it could be the deputy that does it, or the engineer, if that's a different person.
And in that case, you should also point out and inspect, as opposed to inspected. Do you want inspected?
No.
There's a consistency with performed and inspected.
Because she's
Shall be,
inspected. She's
shall cause to be
inspected.
performed and inspected.
Yeah,
Except, yeah, it's a tough, I think we might have winged that.
inspected, yeah.
We'll throw an ED. I don't think the state's going to know the difference on that one. Okay, we're hoping the director's doing it. At the bottom, okay, so at the bottom, you've got that whole thing about prohibitive for speaking to the attorneys and all that good stuff, and there was a standard operating policy on that. And again, when you put something in the charter, it becomes, your constitution. So it was, we just felt it was better to put that in as that there would be a policy for it versus that there would be this hard, fast thing.
I don't disagree with this. I would just maybe alter that language a little bit. To say like, the use of town council shall be pursuant to the adopted standard operating procedures, as opposed to the town shall adopt. It should just be pursuant to town. Do you understand what I mean? It's just a little awkward the way it's
Yep.
written.
What jumped out at me with that is who's doing it, the council or the manager? Who's creating this policy? Do we, as the council, do it, or does he do it?
Well, probably the manager maybe can draft for,
Yeah.
approval and adoption, review, approval and adoption by the town council.
That would make sense. if
And
we
then it'd
did
be
it that way. I just wanna
distributed
clarify and make
to
sure we do it that way.
all departments, so everyone's on the same page. I know in the community where I work, I drafted a town council access policy, so everyone's on the same page. They know they need to come through me before they can't just pick up the phone and call council, and the meter runs, so.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, that just put the onus outside of the charter. All right. Look, this page is pretty clean. Let's see.
Nothing there.
Yeah, that one's empty. Moving on, 13,
All the way down to 5.
10, 5,
You guys
1.
know you're going to have to make a change there because it's going to be 9-1-1, it's going to be to appoint 5 members of said board.
Oh, right.
So anywhere on those boards, because it says
Oh,
9-1,
yeah,
is-
okay.
Yep,
Right.
and anywhere where it says 3, it'd be 5.
oops. Good catch.
Where?
It's 3 members. Manager's authorized 5 members, but we can go through that
That's right.
after. Okay. All right, so if we're moving down to 10.5.1,
If I can clarify.
did I miss something? What?
Well, clarify for section for 10-2-1, because we have another majority vote point here. Do you mean 5 votes or the majority of those present and voting?
Ratified by majority vote of the town council.
I just think we should be clear, we should be consistent about it. If we're going to do it that way, we should. I don't have a problem with that, just want clarification.
So what's the pleasure of the council?
Yeah,
I have no problem with 5 votes, with it being a majority of the council, but
then you have to use the word entires and you put in the 5.
Yeah.
Whereas we talk about running business with 5 people and 3 to 2.
Should be the majority of the council is present.
Then that means 3
For
people.
contracts, I mean, we want to do a contract for copiers?
I don't know, that's why I brought it up.
You know,
What do we want?
I think it should just be members present and voting. The things you should really use, the majority of council should be the big things, you know?
The big ticket items.
The big ticket
the big
items, not the
projects.
day-to-day business
Yeah.
type things, you know?
In major contracts. are
Because a
addressed
major
later
contract,
in
you're
the
going to
later
appropriate
in-
money.
Yeah, major ones
Yeah.
are addressed,
They're
yeah.
addressed later in the charter, so this would just be,
Majority,
you know, water coolers
What are
and
they
coffee
at?
machines. and-
10.2.1.
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with it either way, just as long as we're on the same page.
Okay,
Okay.
All contracts with services.
All right.
Should be ratified by what, majority?
majority, yeah, he's leaving it, yep. Okay, so 10.5.1. Let's see, this is notice of public hearings on proposed budget. Again, you may not want that, right, so you might want to put the language, instead of all pertinent, you want any language from prior, that any public,
Any other is deemed
The same
appropriate
phrasing.
by town
other
council.
public meeting
Other
as
locations
deemed
of the council may
appropriate.
By town
determine.
council, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, appropriate by town council.
Okay.
Okay? I tried to be consistent. All right, and then down bottom, adoption of the budget. So, yeah, you want to talk to that?
Let's see, what do we do here?
Upon recommendation. You
So
added-
the purpose of changing, amending this language, so decreasing, we didn't change that, deleting or decreasing any programs or amounts. But it's important to increase the budget that there is an offsetting revenue source.
Yeah.
So that didn't have that requirement in here. It's extremely important that the town manager be involved if there's an increase to the budget that's going to be recommended, so that he makes sure that there is a corresponding revenue source so that your budget doesn't become out of balance. That's not fair, really, to the people that do all this work to present a budget to you folks. And again, it probably doesn't happen very often, but sometimes you do have rogue counselors and they just want to add something and they don't care that the budget gets out of balance, and that's not fair, nor is it professional, so.
I do have a couple of questions on that
Yeah,
one.
do.
I understand the reasoning of putting that in there. At the same time, this is giving the manager the ability to override council's will
True.
for wanting to raise the budget. If we as a council come up with a funding mechanism and have it, but the manager doesn't personally agree with it and doesn't recommend it, we can't do anything.
I agree.
And I think that's specifically a power that's supposed to be held in council's hands. We are the ones to set the budget. So why should we be subjugated to the manager's recommendation? I understand why we want to consult the manager and get his input. But why should we as a council be limited if we want to increase the budget because we've identified another source and we want to do another, we want to hire another person, or we want to, why should that be tied to the manager's recommendation if the manager doesn't want to do it, because he doesn't think there's a need for it, even though I'm going to say the entire council wants to do it.
So our reasoning for doing this, and other alternate language could be here, here, it's the concern that an increase to the budget is not made without a corresponding revenue source, or a decrease somewhere else, to take the budget out of balance that's presented to you. So alternate, any suggestions?
Verification of an alternate source or
Right, or
additional source.
leave the onus upon council that you have to maintain the balanced budget. If you want to make any increases, there has to be a corresponding decrease somewhere or an increase in a revenue source.
Right. That makes sense.
Well, I mean, that we have to, right? And we can't run deficits, it's against the law. We're not allowed to.
No, you can't.
You can.
You can pass
Well,
an
you can
unbalanced
have debt,
budget.
but you can't, yeah. But I guess my question is, it doesn't make sense that the manager has.
Right.
I agree with you on a point, but he's the one running the operation every day. He might have more knowledge of what we need.
But we're the elected representatives. We're the
Correct.
ones who set the budget,
Correct.
not the manager. He makes the recommendation, we set the budget.
Correct, but
That's
he's the one gonna say, okay, I'm missing body on this department or on this job, I need to do it. But if he think that everything is going the way it's supposed to go, he doesn't need to hire another one. Why one of us is just gonna come in and say, okay, no, I'm gonna put it because I feel like it,
Well, it's not just one of us. It would have to be approved by the majority.
I know, but he's the one
So the thing
running
is-
the operation every day.
But the thing is, if, for example, we all say we want an economic director, and he says, I don't want one, and it's his recommendation not to go forward with one, the way this is written, we cannot increase the budget to add that, even though we feel as a community, we want to add it, and we want to increase, right? So that's the question. I'm not saying, again, that he would. It's not about who's in the seat now, it's about every manager, and making sure that we have a clear charter as to how things are done. And it seems like we're usurping the council's ability to raise and set what the budget is when it should be council's, not the manager's prerogative.
Well, we could phrase it, we could set up by, instead of saying upon a recommendation of town manager, we could say it upon the identification of an appropriate revenue source, which would allow us to take it from someplace else in the budget or some other source of funding that we can just document.
And
I
that
like
works.
that.
And that works, because that was the purpose of this, is just that.
The
So
way
that-
it was,
Right.
the way it was
The
like,
way it runs is,
Pam said, what? They can
right.
just,
They can just add, you can just add all these things into the budget, and the budget is completely out of balance, and it's disaster. So that's the only reason for trying to put in some language here, to make sure that council understands that, there needs to be a balanced budget that's passed by this
It doesn't
council.
take a two-thirds vote.
It does,
So it's a majority vote.
it does.
but people could lobby each other.
But I agree with some of the previous speakers' comments that really the council should be able to, if they feel strongly about something, you would want to have good, robust discussions before you get to that point anyway.
Well, so then what if so at the beginning, instead of the recommendation of the manager, upon identification and verification by the finance director of a funding source, the town council by two-thirds vote may increase.
I think you have to leave it on council. If a council says to that point that says, hey, I want to put an economic development director in at $95,000 per year, and they get 6 votes, well, where are you cutting that money from? Shouldn't be up to the town manager to say, then come back and say, no, the council should be voting on that. Council should be prepared to provide some kind of alternative mechanism.
That's what I just said,
They
that they have to
should,
have it
but it's not
identified.
No, that's my point, but I don't think it should be upon recommendation of the finance director, no.
I didn't say upon recommendation of the I said they identify and verify. They need to verify with the they need to verify the money's there. How do they know that?
Well, no,
This was-
but a council should be prepared. If a
Right.
council wants to say that, they should be prepared to say, I want to take it out of such and such. But
I agree.
I think the language itself works, but I agree with, there has to be an identifiable source of funding for that. I mean, that's,
A verified, identified
Yeah,
source. You
yeah.
can't just say it exists here, no, but is it, it all looks good on paper, but
Right.
did you verify it? I
You
mean,
can't just say,
She says it looks, it's here.
we're gonna hire an economic development director for $100,000 and, increase local receipts by $100,000, and you may be up against the wall with your estimates for local receipts.
You might be.
And in that case, I would hope that, the town manager and his finance team is consulted to say, hey, listen, do we have this play in the local receipts? I mean, again, you all are reasonable people, and you have experience in this, but, I've seen councils in the past that don't. And it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's scary.
that's one of those financial things that we have to think about, come back on another day.
Maybe.
All right, well, think about how you think that should work, and we'll put a big question mark on that one. Okay? Let's see.
Excuse me, real quick. I don't mean to go back, you maybe addressed this already on 10.5.1. You guys are going to make that wording.
As deemed
Yeah,
appropriate
we
by
already
town
did.
council.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
same as
I brought it
before.
up.
Yeah,
Right in.
yeah.
Okay, we are almost done with 10, so we'll just finish 10. Okay, let's see, moving on, section 7. This is, Councilor Marquetti came to visit us and pointed out the 5-year versus 6-year on the capital improvements, and we changed it to 5, which is more consistent in the industry. Okay. And 10.8.1, the town council shall publish, once again, we should change that.
Change that.
Change that, that's easy. And I think that's it on that page, unless somebody had something that big. Oh, 10.12.1. Well, it's a very small paragraph. You probably have, you probably have a lot to
Be here for
say,
2 hours.
but it really isn't, so I'll give you our rendition and why it's not that difficult. For a long time, though, as you brought up the transfers, for many, many years, nobody pointed out that the town charter said all transfers. And then somewhere along the line, a few years back, all transfers, and nobody wanted to cut mustard on that, until the lawyers said we could every year vote to do some policy thing, and that would be okay, but then other councils came in and said, nope, it's still inconsistent. Here's the chance to do something. So what is it you want to do? Well, we went back to old charter. When did this happen? How did things look? Why suddenly did the town manager, did the council have to do all this? And why didn't the day-to-day operations up to a certain limit, at least in transfers, or something exist? So here's what we came up with. At any time during the fiscal year, the town manager, upon recommendation of the finance director, may transfer part or all of any unencumbered appropriation balance among programs within a department, office, or agency, period. Big red letters, guys. Town council may adopt policies and procedures with regards to limitations on such transfers pursuant to Chapter 2, Section 4, 242 of the Charter. End of subject. Why? Because 242 is the language that allows council to adopt policies, procedures, measures, rules, bylaws, all this other stuff. So if you always want to come back for every single dime, then you leave it as it is. If you want to say that, geez, maybe there's a threshold, maybe it's 5,000, maybe it's 2,000, maybe it's 10,000, whatever, as far as interdepartment goes, then that's the pleasure of the council. What we tried to do was leave this as the Constitution, the framework for the councilors to make that decision. If you have a rogue town manager, as apparently had been the case back in the day of when they had all this stuff going on and they changed from, because by the way, this language exists in the existing charter. It changed, and I've heard from so many people, as did Pam and Yvonne, that it changed because you had a town manager who was not the most, whatever you want to call it, above board, I guess. I don't know. So they decided to make it stronger, make it much more difficult, all right? But that's not, 90% of the case here is not that. So rather than tie your hands to something that says all, every penny, 99 cents, whatever, 1 penny has to come to council, How about you come up with something that you're legally bound to do because you already have that right in Chapter 2. So if you come up with this, and by the way, this is interdepartment, this is police. This is, police has a little extra here, they want to put it in to buy some paper instead of some cleaning fluid, whatever, I don't know. But that's an example. Now there's one. Now you go back to the other, why isn't it there? Where is it, Yvonne? Where's the other one? Where's the interdepartment?
Yeah, isn't there should be two.
We're missing it.
Yeah, there should be another,
There's a paragraph.
You got a paragraph missing there.
There's an entire paragraph.
That's an important paragraph, too.
It is a very important paragraph.
Figure it out.
The paragraph says, all intra-department transfers will come to town council for vote. I'm sorry, the most important paragraph. It's in our, I don't have the old, the one I left in my bag, the one we went through the other night. So Yvonne's been, we've been going together, and when we read through it the other night, it was right in front of us. We made sure, because it's in our minutes again, because we discussed it again 2 weeks ago, I guess. So we're just missing that paragraph. It's on the web. It should be on the one on the web.
No, it's interesting. It's not in mine.
Yeah. It's
What?
not in mine either.
It's not in my chart.
No, right.
It's
not in your.
not.
What do you mean?
It's not in the chart.
What do you mean in the charter?
The-
In the new. You're right. It's not in here. Right. That's what we're saying. It should be in. We had a
Right.
working copy at our last meeting,
Yeah.
and it's there.
No, what
This
I'm
is-
saying is the published copy that we have is not in the intra-departmental, it's not in there.
No,
The
Oh, it
published
wouldn't be
copy-
in this.
no, it's in the, it's
We
in the
never had
news.
it. in
No,
there. You're
there
putting
was
it
never a
back in.
policy. It said all transfers must go through the
It
town
wasn't in
council.
the charter
all
itself.
transfers, right.
All
And the
transfers.
old language had the intra-department, yeah, I get you now. Gotcha.
This covers
Okay.
intra, not inter. Intra is within.
Yeah, within, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. So my point being, this one here covers within the department. The town manager has the right to, according to your policies, to make that decision, to move the daily stuff along, so as not to, to get things done. Then there's another paragraph that exists right below this one.
Yeah.
That's not in this copy. It's in the copy in my bag, which Bob brought, and I
Okay.
didn't keep the bag. I should have. Anyway, it says almost the same thing. It says that the town council may, upon recommendation of the manager, that's exactly what it says in the
Right.
finance director, may transfer. The town council may. It's almost the exact same thing, and that is
For
within, amongst departments.
Right.
So it says the exact same thing except for that.
So
And
you're adding
again,
that back in,
yes.
from what the original was back in the day. The intra-
yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I do have that in here. It's in the old one. Oh, my gosh, that's crazy, yeah. At any time during the fiscal year, the town manager, yeah, okay, that's the, yeah, and then there's the second paragraph.
So this is one that I wouldn't be in favor of at all, because I think the town council, that's our only power, is the purse. So we should ask that the town manager come to us for every nickel that he spends. That's the way I feel about it.
I disagree. I
It
feel
does say
that
that it does say in 241 that the town council is in charge of, general, corporate, legislative, policymaking, and appropriation. Powers of the town shall be vested in the town council. So I look at it and I say, well, if that's the case, then we have the power of the purse strings, and that's how it should remain. So I wouldn't be in favor of this.
I trust my department heads to be able to handle small expenses and be able to transfer money around. I trust the manager to do that. That's their job. That's daily operations. Honestly, before coming here, I've never seen where we're voting on 5-cent transfers or 30-cent transfers because there's 30 cents in an account. That's ridiculous. That's overbearing of a town council to be doing, in my opinion. And
We didn't do it for 6 years when I was, the first 6 years I was.
and I've been here, we've been fighting about how this transfer stuff should be done for a long time. Honestly, I trust my department heads to be able to handle small amounts of money being left over and be like, okay, you know what, we have $50 left over here, but we need to go buy some paper. Let's go spend it on paper. Why should they have to come to us and be like, oh, we need to go buy a ream of paper when it seems a little bit too much. For big expenses, 100%, we should be able to authorize and approve those because we don't want large swaths of money going unnoticed. But $50 here, $100 here, $500 even, I think it's a little too much.
Well, first, I want to apologize for not looking at this copy. As I said, we have our working copies, and then we printed, and we did not actually look at this copy as it was printed and presented to you from at the, I'm deeply apologize to that. I do want to say that this leaves the most leeway for council to, you could put a $1,000 limit the first time on a policy, and then 6 months later or 2 months later, whatever you want, you could say, you know, we want to revote that policy. We're seeing that that's still not working. Or maybe you give a manager $5,000 and you could say we want quarterly reports or monthly reports. We want to know how many transfers are being made. Maybe this number is either too high, too low, or is being misused. You have the right to put any policy you want by having a framework that lets you do that. If you put the stickler and leave it the way it was, you have exactly what it was. Lots of meetings with 20, 40 agenda items. So if you do something that gives you that balance, I think that, as I've said in the past, it doesn't abdicate your duty. It enforces it doesn't abdicate your obligations and your authority. You actually exercise it. Personally, as a citizen, I think you exercise it more by putting policies in place.
And if you don't do the 20 cent, the $50, the $500, and you leave the language the way it is, you're violating the charter. Violating the charter. You don't have a choice. You have to put those 20 cent transfers on your council agenda. So this gives you,
it could be $100, it could be anything, it gives you something.
You put in your council rules and regs exactly what you want for that to be, what that to look like.
Well, I've never had any problems voting on things like that. Hasn't been that ridiculous.
Mr. Town Manager.
I'd just like to weigh in. I think one of the things that we should be looking at when you're addressing this is also the efficiency and the effectiveness of government. We all want good government. We want to create public value for the people at home. You hire a professional manager, and hopefully that's why you hired me. And at some point, we develop a relationship, and you have to have a fair amount of trust in me. These are within the department, and you have to have some trust that I have a relationship with those department heads. I can think of one example where the police chief needed ammunition, and he had to come in and justify transferring within his department. I think there are times that in order to have efficient, effective government, we have to be able to make those decisions. You have to have that trust. You have other mechanisms in the charter to rein me in or whomever is sitting in this seat if they're not doing what you need to do. But I'm here to do the day-to-day operations and make things work effectively. I agree. When large transfers happen or transfers between departments, those are things that you should, without a doubt, be looking at. Town meetings all across the Commonwealth do that, but managers typically have the ability to move within a department. And remember, when we were talking about meetings before, every time we do that, you're bringing me and a department head and sometimes staff to these subcommittee meetings. And, you know, it can put a burden on people. And I understand people say, well, they work for the town, but, you know, we're bringing people here at night. They might get paid overtime. They might be getting paid or given comp time. So it creates inefficiencies in that, in those cases. But we also have to look at morale and the fact that people aren't feeling valued if they're constantly questioned. So I think by making these type of changes, you can reduce the number of meetings, which I think has an impact on staff. It can move things along in terms of getting business done on a day-to-day basis. And if you have problems, you bring the manager in and you address it here in the council chambers.
Well, the only person that should be at the meetings is you, really, because everything has to go through you, right? So, I mean, we don't necessarily need the department heads. We need you to be at the meetings.
Which meeting would that be?
Well, you just said any meetings that we have to do a transfer, you would be the one to be at the meeting.
Well,
as far as trust goes, I've always heard it, trust but verify. So I have no problem voting on these things. I don't see why it's a big deal to vote on them. Even if it's $5, even if it's a nickel, I don't care. I think we should be involved in voting on it. That's our only power. Why do we exist? That is the only reason that we exist. Well, not the only, but one of the main reasons why we exist.
But I just want to say, but if we were to follow your point, that means I have to be at every subcommittee meeting. And that
You
means I'm
should
out
be.
4 nights a week. And that means I can't focus on the attention, the day-to-day business if you're keeping me here every night of the week, which is becoming more and more the norm. I can't spread myself too thin, and there are a lot of overlapping meetings.
Well, we
So
just had
you-
a section where you are required to attend every subcommittee. We
Right,
just had, we
and what
just,
and that's where I said that is not working. Actually, I like what they have here, where they say, where it could refer back to Chapter 2, Section 242, that you could put that under the meeting section and allow the council to create rules and regulations with regard to who attends what meeting and not have it in the charter. So depending upon who the manager is at the time, you could modify those rules without requiring a charter change as to who you need at what meeting and what the meeting schedule is.
I think this is a good compromise because it doesn't take away all the authority from the council. The council still has to adopt a policy that says this is our transfer policy. So we have some oversight and we can debate what that is. Talking to a previous finance director from many years ago, he explained very eloquently how they did transfers. And it was just a normal course of business. Everything that was, if it went from DPW to police, always went to council. Or whatever departments, always went to council, that went to council. Within the department, it was, there was checks and balances. The department head said, hey, I need to transfer X number of dollars from this account to this account. So that police, say it was the police chief said there was this amount of money, this is how much money I have. He submits it to, or that department head submits it to the finance director. The finance director says, yes, there's an appropriation in there, you have the check, boom, then it went to the town manager, and I think he said they would send a report up to town council
9/11.
monthly or something that said these were the transfers that we did within that month. And we should be working on the big policy issues and budgetary. We talked about the other night, said we want to talk about split tax rate. So if we're going to spend all our time talking about 20 cents here, 30 cents here, instead of saying, hey, let's talk and debate a split tax rate, we talk about having a facilities director and how we're going to manage projects and a direct oversight. So I'm going to spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour debating all these transfers instead of saying, hey, how would that facilities manager or that director or that key employee talk about these projects? We know we have a project on Main Street that has some issues on it. Let's talk about the project that just took place instead of transfers. But we still have accountability because we're telling them to come up with a good policy. Now, I'm not for carte blanche because I think I said on the prior policy that was adopted through, and Council, former Chairman Clements had worked on that policy that got it passed. I think there was some questions on that because I think it said, I can't remember the dollar amount, it might have been $10,000 or 30% or 30% the greater of. And I said, hey, look, I don't have a problem with that lower amount because if there's 100 line items within the police budget, copier has $1,000, you know, that's small amounts. But 30% of their salary account at $600, that would be $600,000, say, because it's a $2 million line item just for salaries. Yeah, I think council should take a look at that.
Yeah.
Because if you have that ability as a town manager to transfer that, I have faith in the town manager, but I think there has to be some conversation with council that says, that's a lot of money to be allowed to be transferred.
Yeah.
So by the ability for us to develop a policy around this is the right way to do it, but it does say, and we know the prior problems with them taking money out of different accounts for a piece of equipment. So I think it is a good compromise to accomplish the goals because you still have fiscal oversight. We're not giving that up. We're saying you're accountable to us, Mr. Town Manager. You're going to give us documentation about how we manage our money, but it's in a sensible manner so that the day-to-day operations can go. And to the point about, hey, we don't need, say, the police chief at PPP to talk about a transfer. I don't know, because there's questions that come up.
how much did those bullets cost, each bullet? And how many rounds do you have to fire? Well, I don't expect the town manager to know all that because that's not the day-to-day operations. So we're going to tell the town manager, hey, I need $5,000 transfer because I have to buy X number of ammunition. Well, how many guys are you training? How many rounds do you have to do? How many times do you shoot? I don't know. Well, why don't you have the police chief here to answer those questions? So we can. Why would the town manager have to know how many rounds that a police officer has to shoot for their qualifications? That's absolutely ridiculous. Because I want Mr. Town Manager or any town manager to tell me I need a budget for. You always talk about roads, and I want a roads plan. So I'm going to tell the town manager, I want you to figure out how many bullets you have instead of working out the roads plan and a fiscal policy to accomplish that goal? Right. I would never want that from a town manager. If we're going to micromanage a town manager at that point, then we're in the wrong business to say, I want the town manager to know how many bullets have to be shot at a qualification. I can't believe you're even saying that, Counselor.
Well, I mean, you're talking about something completely different, though.
No, I'm not. You just said that you
Bullets?
don't need the
I don't know
town,
what
you
the
don't need
bullets
the
have to do
department, wait a minute. You just said that you don't need the department head at a budget or a transfer. And
It's important for him to be there. I mean, you want the department
no,
head.
you just
yes,
said,
but
I don't
it's
need the
important for him
department
to
head
be there.
there. You just said, I don't need the department head there. I just need the town manager. And I'm telling the points that have come up at council meetings, and you specifically and other councilors ask those specific questions.
Everything goes through the town manager, everything. So he should know. He should know what every department head wants and why they want it, right down to the minute details.
So I'm going to argue the point
That's
again.
his job to do
The
that.
police chief said, I need $5,000 for ammunition, for qualifications, right? And he says, I need $5,000 for qualifications. He knows he needs qualifications, and the police department has annual qualifications. And there were questions up here. How much does each bullet cost? What's the inflationary? How many bullets does each person have to shoot? How many officers do I have? Do you think I need him to know that information?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
The police chief needs to know.
Gentlemen.
I make a motion that we
Table.
consider moving this to another meeting, but we can finish this point, because this is what my point was. This conversation was going to be a long conversation.
Okay,
But I will defer to that, but I'm not making a motion yet.
All right, Counselor Adams. Counselor Adams, you're asking to be recognized.
no, I wanted you to speak first, but I just want to I want to say exactly what this says, too, because I
So,
have the language in front of me.
I
Then we'll-
completely understand about the wanting the control and all that kind of stuff. That's what we're elected for. But that being said, before we kind of delved into this a couple years ago, based on the policy, based on the charter, I was in favor of that policy because it didn't micromanage the department heads or the town manager, allowed them to do it. But there has to be oversight at the same time with that monthly or quarterly report of any type of transfers that may have happened. But the most important thing here now is us as a council have to set a policy. I like the verbiage in here. It gives us an opportunity to adjust fire where we need to adjust fire, and that happens with every council in there. And lastly, I would say I'm in support of this with the policy, obviously a policy quickly after that. But I will say this, we are the leadership of the town. And if based on definitions of leadership of the town, then we should know how much a bullet costs. We shouldn't have to worry about asking the questions to the police chief or the town manager. Thank you.
Well, we are almost done, aren't we?
So we
Ms.
will get
Clements.
everybody, thank you, Mr. Chair, we will get everybody the exact wording, and I just want to point out that this original is correct. At any time during the fiscal year, the town manager, upon recommendation of the finance director, so it's not just the town manager, may transfer part or any of all unencumbered appropriate balances among programs within a department, office, or agency. So, and then with town council may adopt the policies and procedures with regards to limitations on such transfers pursuant to Chapter 2, Section 4242 Charter. The second paragraph should then read, as it was in the old charter, at any time during the fiscal year, upon written request by the town manager, the town council may transfer part or all of any unencumbered appropriation balances from one department, office, or agency to another. And that's where that ends, because you don't have to have a policy on yourself, technically. So it was two separate paragraphs that we spread this out as, and stuff happens, and it's not there. So we'll get you the exact copy, but that's how it works out. And I think your conversations are healthy and wonderful, and in the end, it'll be a majority that'll make that decision, so, for the benefit of the community. But I think really healthy conversation, so I'm glad we're doing it together. Not just us. Thank you. That's really all I have to add on that, and we're happy to do another meeting or whatever. I think this section ended, if we wanted to actually go down and be done, just 10:15, accountant, town accountant versus manager as designee. Oh, because
Because that's the law.
it's the law.
The town accountant, the manager doesn't have the authority to certify appropriation balances. The town accountant does. That's according to Mass General laws.
So this was a great catch by Pam, because we don't know how it ever got to this point, but it wasn't caught the last 2 times. So, and I said, well, maybe it just got changed. She goes, it's been there 20 years or so. So technically, it's been a long time in our charter incorrect, so. And other than that, I don't think there's anything else there, right? So that would end us at Chapter 11. Or not end us, I mean, obviously, there's plenty to talk about. So. Oh, one other thing, I gave you a piece of paper. I just want to make sure you know why. It's dated October 19th, 2015. These are the minutes from the town council meeting. Agenda item number 13, you'll notice, vote to accept that all charter changes voted upon and approved by town council shall be sent to the Massachusetts Senate and House of Representatives in general court assembled to be passed as special legislation and to be approved by the governor, comma, with the caveat that such charter changes shall take effect only upon acceptance by a majority of the voters of the town at the next possible town election. That is language that, again, that was what we used in 15, if that so is your desire when this is done, and that is the language that both Senator Fatman and Representative Durant felt was still very appropriate to send with the document, if that's how you choose to do it down the road. That's how you would need to then vote on it. The clerk would certify the vote, and it would be sent to them with a cover letter of some type, usually from the chair. Right? So that's the information.
Okay, so at this point, I'm getting the sense that we're ready to call it a night. Okay. Would you like to discuss another day for the next meeting for the council of the whole?
We are pretty close to the end. You sure you don't want to finish it?
Depends on what day we want to do it. Do we want to wait until after the holidays, or do we want
We're so
to,
close to the end here.
we want to try to cram another meeting in before the holidays?
Knock this thing out.
If it's,
Yeah, let's just
if I may
finish it.
say, if it's possible, well, it depends on what your intention is. If you intend to try to get it to the June election, then, June, because now it's 2 weeks ahead, then I'm told that early as possible in January to get it to them would be better. Even then, they're going to have to do some pushing because the government's been quite slow in the last year and a half or so. But they didn't think it was impossible. Beyond that, then who knows? So that's up, that'll be the case as to waiting till potentially the next June election to do anything. So we are close. There isn't a whole lot left, just some referendum stuff that we've proposed changes to that just makes it better
I'm okay sticking around.
for the what?
I'm
I'm
okay.
okay sticking around.
I'm okay sticking.
Councilor Jovan?
Oh, no, I just,
Are you all set?
I'm not saying.
Okay.
So it's either sticking around or keep going. It's up to you. Or another meeting to, we're going to correct things,
Are we
obviously.
talking late December or early January?
Sad, I'm sorry.
Are we talking late December or early January?
Is it possible
Well,
to
I
do
mean,
December?
do we have the joint meeting before the regular meeting?
We have a joint meeting before the regular meeting
At what
next
time?
Monday
6:30?
at 6:30.
I mean, I don't know how quickly I want to go through it. I don't want to rush it, but I mean, if you want to try to power through it, it's fine with me. I mean, you've got, what? We're going to have to come back to vote on this anyway, right? So.
Right, so if you vote, so you have a meeting set for January 10th, if that were I wouldn't, I don't know. I told them the dates.
Well, I guess I
That
would
would
have
be
just
the
opened up.
latest,
Does
though.
anybody have any questions on the remaining provisions? I mean, instead of going pace.
I do.
I mean, it might be easier to just do that. I mean, and if we have a specific question.
Specify if you wanted, we could do
Well,
that. It's up to you.
12.3.3, it just seemed confusing to me that you say that,
Hang on, let me look. 12 through 3, okay.
12.3.3, after the residents or the citizens give you a petition to the town council, and if the town council rejects it, is that saying that they have to go back out again and get signatures again? Because that's how it looked to me, but I'm sure that's not what was meant, it's just that's how it looks to me.
Just a question. I mean, we hadn't made a decision as a council yet whether or not we were going to continue or not. We just started continuing with questions after we just brought up asking whether or not we wanted to do this or not. So, and I'm going to say it, my perspective is I'm not ready to continue anymore tonight. I'm drained. I've had a long day. This is a long discussion. We've been here for 3 hours. I would like to actually put some good time and thought into this and not rush through it.
Well, there's no one stopping you. If you have to go, you have to go.
Well, that's not the
have
point, Counselor.
I don't have a
I
problem
don't
sticking
think it's
around.
appropriate to rush through a document.
We're not rushing through, we're not voting on it tonight, right?
Yeah, because,
It's up to the council if you don't want to stick around. But I think it should be,
this whole
the
section.
whole council decides.
Well, there's a motion.
Originally was upon presentation, then legislation shall.
I don't have a problem sticking around and finishing it up.
I never made a formal motion. All right, let's move it
I'll
along.
move that we postpone and
right, because
postpone
otherwise-
discussion to another meeting and adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone to a future date.
When do we want to do it?
Yeah. What date? When's our first meeting in January? Is it the 3rd?
January 10th.
January 10th. So I'm looking,
How if we did the week before that?
well, that's what I'm looking at that. I'm saying that Wednesday, January 5th is available as far as I can see. And if we have a meeting on Wednesday, January 5th, that gives us time to get it posted on the 6th to the meeting on the 10th if we're going to have this vote.
10 pages left. Okay. Let's spend another hour and finish it. 10
Well, we can't
pages.
vote on it anyway, so we're going to have another meeting to vote on.
Yeah,
I would recommend that if we do that, make it a special town council meeting and put the vote on that
on that day.
day.
That would
Then
be-
whatever changes we make.
I would agree.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right, so
So the 27th out,
just
throwing it out there.
on Wednesday, January 5th, I believe, Wednesday, January 5th. We'll have a
And could I
special-
just ask, could you email us the changes that we made?
Yeah.
I'll work
work
on
on
them this week.
Yeah, she'll have to go through that. So is it my understanding that you're not allowing remote participation obviously for voting members and such, but you're allowing a presentation type people? Or not?
No, we have no remote participation.
What's that?
Right,
As a
but
council right
people have had people, other boards or something,
Other
can do
boards have
remote
been doing
participation.
some
like
remote
if,
meetings,
because
but
I'm
we haven't.
not here at all.
The town council never
That's
took
the
a
law.
vote to
Town council doesn't
not
have to
have
vote as the
remote
law.
participation.
I thought we did.
We never
I thought
took
Well, I guess my,
voted to go out of
even maybe
That's the
by
law
a phone.
right now, you don't need to.
we didn't do anything about other boards.
Still don't?
That's the law.
So then if I
Some of them are doing it.
either called in or something, I could participate potentially on the 5th.
So
Just asking. Does anybody want to answer that?
So you're not, what you're saying is not going to be.
I'm not here on the 5th, but I'm happy to take time out.
All right, so we're talking Wednesday, we're talking about, by your motion, to
Reconvene.
reconvene, thank you, reconvene on Wednesday, January 5th at 7 PM for a special town meeting.
Special town council meeting.
I would not use the word reconvene. I would adjourn this meeting, call a special town council meeting to continue the conversation.
Well, the agenda item would
You're
be,
reconvening the council of the whole.
Oh, that's fair.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? 2, 3. By 5 to 3, it passes.
Okay.
We're adjourned.